when the seagulls follow the troll, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you.
Nobody cares, mate.
Nobody cares, mate. Nobody fucking cares, mate, honestly.
And the guy's talking absolute nonsense. Never heard so much rubbish in my life.
Normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
I'm telling you, don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed Friday night, so you know what that means. It's time for the Bhoycie Bus time-travelling version, the Bustalgia World Tour, to rev up those engines, because we are heading back, a wee bit further back than we have recently. We'll go back to the 90s, the dark decade of the 90s. Unfortunately, it's a season where things didn't quite work out, but, you know, I said I won't shy away from those type of seasons, but it's one of them tonight. It's 1998-99. The good doctor, Dr. Jozef Venglos, he answered the call when Celtic put it out there. We're going to go back and look at how he did that season. It's going to be a good one, folks. So welcome aboard on the bus. But as you can see, I've got my usual team with me tonight for a bit of time-travelling antics. And, of course, he is sporting the away shirt, the iconic away shirt from that season. Russell Boyce. There was only one choice tonight for the apparel, wasn't there, mate?
Absolutely, mate. It's
Only
a classic top. Any excuse to wheel this bad boy out. It feels very Mark Viduka-esque now. I was always thinking it reminded me like Vida Reset or something, and then because obviously Viduka plays a prominent role, and I was watching his goals, Phil, doing my homework. And
good montage, that one. Really, really good.
It was very good montage, and we'll talk about him later. He's some player.
Oh, aye, he was indeed. And of course, what would Bustalgia be on Friday Night? The bus's local rock star himself is Canada's favourite Tim, is Liam Greenlaw. Liam, mate. Yes. Oh, good, mate. Good. How are you doing, mate?
Good. Feeling a wee bit rough this morning. Trying to defy age and see if I can still run about with youngins at night. And I was being banned for all sorts of hours last night and just ridiculous behaviour for a man of my vintage. You know? Never, mate. Crazy behaviour. So it is. Anyhow, but I am good. Happy to be on this. I love this season.
Yeah, let's all sort you out.
Even though the way it ended, this was a great season. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the new players that came in, and as you were saying, that strip is an absolute belter. So was the home one as well. I liked that one too. I like the colours on the strips. I thought they looked really smart, and it was good. And you know, I don't know where all my Umbro ones are. My son took them all. That became a big skateboard thing over here to wear Umbro jerseys. And so I was sort of standing out where Nick Thomas Celtic one. So
Well, we were talking about on the TNF. We got onto the subject to some iconic kits last night. Funny enough, that one never got mentioned. But that's when we get into the season, we'll be talking a bit about the legacy of that kit, because me and Russell have had a chat before about this one. It's a very interesting one because it is a great design. It stands out in people's heads. People remember it. But I've got a lot of bad memories of things happening in it, unfortunately. A lot of bad results in that kit. And I hate it when there's an away kit always associated with bad things. I hate it because ones like that are just cracking. But yeah, unfortunately, a few clanger results along the way. But we'll get on to that during the show tonight. But of course, before we go any further, as I'm in the driving seat tonight, I need to remind all of the viewers, if you're a new viewer to the bus, then of course, if you like the cut of our jib, like the content we're putting out, think, I'll add that to my little collection of Celtic pods and that I subscribe to, then by all means, please do hit that subscribe button. And of course, if you click the bell notification, you will get that notification when we go live. And as you will find out very quickly, we go live a lot. Very much all week. You will be seeing us constantly on your YouTube account and your notification box. The Bhoycie Bus is live. Exactly. That's the way to do it. And of course, if you are a long-time subscriber, then of course hit that like button. It helps us out massively. And of course, get involved in the comment section tonight. We're going to need some positive comments to get us through this one, because I say it's not the best of seasons in terms of how it ended. So I want to hear your memories tonight about Jozef Venglos, about what happened that season and so forth. So if you have any lasting memories, by all means, throw them in there. Were you at the 5-1 game? The last time a 3 o'clock kickoff happened between Celtic and Rangers in the league game. Were you there? Tell us about it if you were. And of course, if you wish to share the link of the Bhoycie Bus, then by all means, please do so. That would be absolutely smashing. And as I always say, it's all that good stuff because it helps the channel out massively. Now, guys, I'm not going to help you out massively because I've got a trivia question, but it's not a bad one. It's not. I think this is quite a kind one tonight. I think this is one of these ones I think you either get like right away, or like there'll be one answer that will just be a bit snidey. But I think I can see he's getting majority of these in a winner when we answers at the end. It's all around squad numbers. How are you on them? Not good, Liam. Okay, I can tell by that reaction. Because tonight's
I'm dyslexic on this bus. That's what it is. Can't do numbers.
No. Tonight's question is: this was the first season that Scottish football introduced individual squad numbers rather than the traditional 1 to 11 on a match day. However, in the Celtic squad and the number reshuffle, can you name the players that did get numbers 1 to 11 for this coming season, 98-99? So who did get the numbers 1 to 11 from the squad? Who kept those ones? So yeah,
this was the first season. We implemented squad numbers. So naturally, we had to select who would be 1 to 50 or whatever. So we've got to get the ones that were number 1 to 11.
1 to 11, aye. Because Viduka had like 36, which was blowing my mind at the time when they brought in the squad numbers. I know down in England, they had them for a good few years, but the numbers were always still, maybe within 25. But then when I saw a player with number 36 on his back, I was like, what? Such a foreign concept.
I bet that's 3 + 6 = 9 or something, honestly.
Something like that. Like Mcginlay'S with the 4 + 6 = 10. That was his whole thing. Yeah. It'll be something like that. But yeah, that is tonight's question. I say it's one of these ones, you'll either get them all in a winner, or there'll be one wee snidey one in there that might catch you out. But we'll come back to the answers at the end of the show, guys. So let's get on with it. Let's get into season 1998-99, Jozef Venglos. But first and foremost, as we do, before we get into all the Celtic news about what was going on, we need to look at the world football, first and foremost, what was going on in the summer of 1998, because we have landed in this era before, Russell, by doing the France 98, the very iconic World Cup. We've landed in this time period. But let's just go quickly recap of what happened in terms of the big football winners that summer. So, Champions League, it was won by Real Madrid, one of the many times that they have won the Champions League. On this occasion, they beat Juventus 1-0 in Amsterdam. It was a Yugoslavian striker, because it was still Yugoslavia at the time, Predrag Mijatovic, scored the winner. In the UEFA Cup, one of the players that we wax lyrical about on Bustalgia, his name comes up, it was the R9 show, because Inter Milan defeated Lazio 3-0 in an all-Italian final held in Paris. It was R9 Zanetti with a bit of a rare goal, and Ivan Zamorano, who scored the goals in that one. Yes, indeed. Ivan Zamorano.
He's another one who added up his numbers, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was annoyed when R9 got the number 9 off him, and he had one with a wee plus sign in the middle and an 8.
That's fucking embarrassing, eh? Like, seeing you look back, you're like, calm down, mate. It's only a number. Do you know what I mean? Who's
Nobody
adding
cares,
squad
mate.
numbers? Well, who's adding, like, who's looking at 18 and looking for a wee plus in between the two of them and going, oh, you really are still number 9, Ivan. Honestly, fucking shut up. You're getting paid 50 grand a week.
Exactly.
Calm right down.
Nobody cares, mate. Just a number on the back of your shirt, mate. Nobody cares. But I just maybe superstition and stuff like that. But I was he too happy when, heaven forbid, the best player in the world at that point in time comes and takes his squad number. Jesus, you know that. What a travesty.
I'll go 18 and make it a wee actual, fucking hint that it's number 9 still was really mine. It's like, yeah, grip, man.
Oh, come on, Sam. I know you're better than that. Come on. He was a good number 9, of course, Mr. Sutton.
Yeah, Big Sat, he wasn't doing 1+8. And he wasn't singing Tina Turner on the couch home either.
He wasn't. And at this point in time, the Cup Winners' Cup was still around. It was the penultimate Cup Winners' Cup, the second to last one. And Chelsea won it. They beat VfB Stuttgart in the final when Gianfranco Zola scored the only goal of the game after coming on as a sub. Time scored with his first touch to win it for Chelsea on that day. And in England, Arsenal won the Premier League first of Arsene Wenger's 3 title wins. They wrapped up the title with a few games to go. That is the iconic game where they beat Everton 4-0 and Tony Adams scores the final goal. Where Steve Bold, his centre-back partner, chips the ball brilliantly over the back line in for Tony Adams. Big centre-back that he is, controls it brilliantly and volleys it in with his left foot. It's the most un-Tony Adams goal you can imagine, but what a way to wrap up the title.
I think it's iconic. It's one of the most iconic moments in that league's history. Well, in the Premier League era, I don't know anything about it before then. But I think in Premier League era, centre-half going out. Steve Bolt who's clipped it forward too.
It is. Steve Bolt.
2 centre-halves combining like that. And I think Adam's story as well for recovering alcoholic, expected to be the one who was left behind with the Wenger sort of revolution. And actually Wenger was like, no, he's too good. Made captain. And I think it's a classy moment.
I'm pretty certain outside the Emirates they've got like different statues, and I think that's the Tony Adams one. It's a celebration for that one.
Good. So good, that goal. It's so good.
Oh, it's class. Absolutely class. I think he scored a brace that day. I think we mentioned it in the 98 World Cup one. Overmars scores 2. I think Adams scores 2. Or it might be one of them goes down as a Slaven Bilic showing goal. The two of them got for a header at the back post.
Right.
But that's some story. Tony Adams scored 2 on the day as well. But the second goal, as I say, Steve Bold playing it through like a playmaker. Just that ball. Brilliant. I say Tony Adams with his left foot as well. The way he controls it. Superb. But that wasn't the end of Arsenal's trophies that season. They also won the FA Cup. They beat Newcastle in the final 2-0 when Overmars and Anelka scored. And as for the League Cup, Chelsea kept up their reputation of being a cup team by winning that year's Coca-Cola Cup, because that was a sponsor at the time. I was like, the Coca-Cola Cup always had a good ring to it. It's got a very nostalgic feel when I hear that Coca-Cola Cup. After that, I think it became the Worthington Cup and then Carling Cup, and yeah, they just change. The sponsor changes every 2 or 3 years now. But for a good period, both Scotland and England were the Coca-Cola Cup was the League Cup sponsor by Chelsea.
That's a good ring to it, the Coca-Cola Cup.
Aye.
I like that. Good marketing.
It is. It's one of those advertising boards that's very iconic with football, because at World Cups, Coca-Cola is always one of the sponsors for like, with FIFA. So you always see that name around. Go back to like the classic World Cups of the 90s and the 80s. You see like Maradona's goal where he runs by all the England players in 86. There's like Coca-Cola advertising hoardings in the background, and it's like, well, if you're going to have your name in the background of any goal, that's a good one to have it in the background. Get the name out there, definitely. Yeah, it had a good ring to it. And I say both Scotland and England had the same sponsorship. Scotland having same sponsorship deals as England at the same time. What is going on here? We will be getting on, of course, sponsorships and TV deals, because it's very, very crucial this season. But I say Chelsea, they beat Middlesbrough in a repeat of the season's FA Cup final from 1997. Now, in Scotland, of course, we've covered this season. We'll talk about it again because it was a significant one. Because obviously only title that we won in the 90s, we stopped Rangers' attempts at 10 in a row. Liam, it goes without saying, mate, that how important and how iconic this was. And one thing that I've found with the advent of social media in the last few years, the amount of Rangers fans out there that don't seem to know that this happened. So it's just kind of embarrassing with the way they go on about Celtic blowing the 10, and it's like, you do know that this happened like in the 90s. And I also my eyes were opened to the number of fans that don't seem to know who won the league in Scotland between 1966 and 1974. And it's like, you do know that Celtic won 9 in a row first, don't you? But these youngins, Liam.
I know.
You need to be educated. That's what we need to get them watching the bus. Gather the wains around here for the sweat bits. But other than that, you get a good education. It's going in the schools, this Bustalgia.
Oh, aye. You could teach them a thing or two, but it was
the end of that season. Phil, I remember it just being like, just a massive relief. And then all the crazy stuff went on as well. It's like just when you're catching your breath, finally we can relax, as we'll get into, but just went all back up in the air again.
Yeah, it did. And it was the feeling of euphoria to have won that title. And so when you look at the pictures of them winning the league on that day, Russell, where they said it was 40,000 were in the stadium because like the temporary stand was still erected at that point. There was more than 40,000 in the stadium. I think the temporary stand had come down at that point because the west stand was getting built, but there was people on the stairwells. It was like they must have been doubling up, tripling up at the turnstiles or something, because there's no way that just all the people in that stadium were just allocated to the seats. There was you couldn't move. You just look at the pictures in the background when Bratback scores that goal. The whole stairwell is just filled with people. Mental scenes.
It was. It did seem like it was more than what the official attendance was. But I suppose for the occasions like that, you'll get a bit of that, won't you? I think it was a moment in time. Do you know what I mean? It'd been one hell of a long wait for a lot of people. So it was. It was always going to happen. I think that natural.
Aye, and of course you get the little pitch invasion at the end. And so the iconic image of the full-time whistle goes Tom Boyd, just because he'd been with the club a long time at that point. Just that elation coming out as soon as the full-time whistle went, and people just running on the park. Don't blame them at all, but it was a hell of a moment. But then just a matter of days later to get the news of that Wim Jansen was leaving the club, and it was like, oh no, only Celtic can do this. But yeah, we'll be getting on to that very, very soon. But it wasn't the only trophy that we won. Obviously, we picked up the League Cup as well. Amazingly, the only League Cup that we won in the 90s. We only won one Scottish Cup, one League Cup, and one league title through the entire 90s. We won 2 of them in the same season. But yeah, that Coca-Cola Cup final against Dundee United, it was Larson, Mark Reaper, and Craig Bugley who scored the goals that day. I always felt like the Mark Reaper goal went in slow motion for some reason. When it was on feed, there was just something weird about it, like the way the ball looped towards the goal, hit the post, and went in. Just like it was a moment in time, like something. Just when I was watching it live, I always remember there's something about that. And then Larson's goal chipped. He ended up lobbing the goalkeeper, but it was inadvertent because it deflected off a defender. And Craig Bugley's one was one of those headers where he just froze himself at it. I think Reggie Blinker got to the byline, stuck a cross in, and Bugley was just like, get out of my way. Nobody's getting in my way for this one. Diving header. But we talked about it. We did the 98 show, didn't we? Where how important Craig Bugley was that season, and it's kind of overlooked after the way he left the club, and since then going into the media and having a bit of a chip on his shoulder. But he was so vital that season, wasn't he, Russell?
Totally, mate. I think it's funny when you do these shows, you go back and you identify a player, and then you find like, fucking hell, right? What would you have done with him in the team? Big Reggie Blinker. No, I'm only kidding about Blinker. But I think in general, you do think, the Mark Reaper loving as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you think of folks' impacts and certain seasons. It's all based on one thing, and that's fucking medals and trophies, right? That's it. I know I said one thing there, but they're kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think that you end up, you reflect on those seasons, and it elevates players as well to a status that they could have the same maybe numbers in. If they one fuck all that season, ain't going to get the same credit. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally, man. And speaking of winning stuff, that was something Rangers didn't do that season, Liam, because if you remember as well, the Scottish Cup final, after they knocked us out in the semi-final, we could have potentially got a treble that season, which is an amazing thought when you think about it. They actually lost to Hearts in the final at Celtic Park. The Stefan Adam winning goal, I believe it was. But it wasn't the ending that they were looking for. It was kind of, from our point of view, it's like couldn't happen to a nicer club. What an ending to their attempt to 10 in a row. They didn't win a thing. So it was a very happy ending that season, wasn't it, Liam?
It's amazing the parallels between the end of that season and the end of your 10 in a row run, our second one. As well, too, like 1-0 and just having no hope and all that. And, they were looking at a massive rebuild as well, It was unacceptable for them to that point. They had all the motion. They were signing all the big players. Well, we know why now, but they seemed to be the one. It was like I was surprised. I thought I was absolutely overjoyed when we won it, but I was surprised. I didn't think we were going to do it.
Oh no, we definitely. After 10 years of waiting, there was that infamous game with 2 to go where we could have done Dunfermline at East End Park and won it, and we conceded a late equaliser. A guy named Craig Falconbridge scored, and it was like, well, we've waited 10 years. Let's wait another week, I guess, but it was torture, that build up to that St Johnstone game. And if I remember right, there was a moment where Georgia Boyle skied one over the bar right on the line when we were 1-0 up. God almighty. Cutting it close to Celtic, cutting it close, but we got there in the end. I say we won our first title in 10 years, a hugely significant one, but as we're going to discuss, things quickly went pear-shaped, unfortunately, because Celtic not improving from position of strength. Oh, heaven forbid, not heard that one before. But what else happened across the continent in the summer of '98? Obviously, the big leagues were won by Juventus in Italy. It was Barcelona in Spain. In Germany, it was Kaiserslautern won it. It wasn't Bayern or Dortmund or anybody else like Leverkusen. None of that. No. Kaiserslautern won the league that year. And in France, it was Racing Club Lens that won the league. So no PSG, not Marseille, not Monaco.
Wow.
Lens. And of course, in Holland and Portugal, it was Ajax and Porto. No surprise there. They seem to be dominant teams when it comes to those 2 leagues. And of course, the World Cup happened in the summer of 1998, which France won on home territory. So we've already done that episode, one of the earliest Bustalgia episodes we did, number 3 it would have been.
Yep.
Good one. I know Mark doesn't like me to mention the mentions of Croatia, but Croatia featured heavily in that World Cup. They were a sensation. Old Davor Suker, brilliant World Cup, great memories, and a very mysterious final with the R9, panic attack and stuff like that. It's a compelling story, to say the least. Definitely is when you go back and look at it and what happened that night. But end of the day, you can't fault France. Zidane was on another planet at this point in time. He was justifiably, Ballon d'Or winner. Him or Ronaldo were easily the 2 best players in the world, and it was Zidane's night in that World Cup final. But phenomenal memories of it. Now, Russell, you love a bit of the major transfers and all that stuff. Yes, you do. Again, I've not included any fees. I've just took down a wee note of like the big headlines, the big movers.
I'll keep you right, Phil.
You keep me right, mate.
I'll keep you right. What ones I can remember?
Well, the biggest transfer was Denilson went from Sao Paulo to, I would say, relatively unfancied Real Betis, because if you move into Spain, you would say Barca, Real Madrid, even Atletico Madrid. But yeah, Real Betis signed him for big bucks that summer. Denilson, Brazilian international, and of course we talked about. Good. Yeah, it was, and he featured heavily on. Aye, at that point in time, I think
record 21 million.
21 million, man.
21 million. I've not checked that, by the way, but I remember it. I remember it on the news. My memory's fucking weird. It was 21 million pounds. He joined Betis for. Frightening, eh?
Aye.
It's just, I suppose it's one of those things we talk about the money being nuts now. It's freaking nuts then as well. Do you know what I mean? Just,
I don't know.
Do you know what I mean?
Aye, it's as I say, Betis was the most surprising thing about that, other than the price, where we were 21. At that time, that is huge, in relation to the late 90s. But Real Betis was just such a shock, and he stayed there for quite a while. But he does. When we were doing the Bustalgia episodes, when we would talk about every year there'd be like a Nike advert, Denilson would always be featured in them as well. He was because Brazil were the poster boys of the Nike campaigns, and Denilson was always involved in them. But I stayed at Real Betis for quite a fair time. But I say I was surprised by that. Was the biggest transfer of the summer. But another team that was making big moves that summer was Man United, because of course in 1999 they would go on and have quite a season, winning the Champions League, the Premier League and the FA Cup. They'll begin to get the pieces in place for that team by adding Dwight York and Jaap Stam that summer.
12.8 million for Dwight York. How specific is that? I'm telling you, I'm right. I remember, man. I remember these. I've not checked it, I promise you. That signing was huge. He was a you're signing one of your, I know Villa weren't, you wouldn't have thought them maybe Man United sort of rivals at the time as such, but Premier League to Premier League, it always inflates the fee, you think, but I think they got the money back on him.
Am I right in saying, guys, that the Villa manager at the time, John Gregory, had I'm going to use a wrestling term, cut quite a scathing promo on Dwight York. Did he not say what's the effect of, if I had a gun at the time, I would have shot him when Dwight York requested the transfer? Because there's a press conference out there, I'm sure. John Gregory's talking about it, and obviously he's not happy. And he's talking about when Dwight York came to him saying he's requesting a transfer. He says, what's the effect if I had a gun at the time? I would have shot him. Like, woof, Jesus, that's pretty strong there, John. Aye, but John Gregory was the Villa manager, and I say, wasn't he best pleased? But I mean, he's losing his best striker at that point in Villa, but Dwight York would go on and have a hell of a season at Man U and a hell of a time for the next few years at Man United, him and Andy Cole. And in fact, it was mentioned on the Breakfast Bar this week, Regan brought it up about Alex Ferguson's sort of ethos of always having 4 good strikers, because he was always going to play 4-4-2 was his go-to formation. But yeah, especially during that era, it was Cole, York, Sheringham and Solskjaer. It was a case of no matter what one you played, you were always going to get a top performance out of them, get goals out of them. But the best combination, I think, out of they 4 was always York and Cole, wasn't it? They were like the go-to tandem up front.
But it was the other 2 who scored the goal in the Champions League
2.
final.
So it is, yeah. Yeah.
It's funny that. But I mean, again, what would you do with 4 strikers? How would they get a game? How would you make it work, Liam? We wouldn't win nothing. It wouldn't work. Andrew wouldn't like it. Fucking folk are mad, man.
Well, the thing about that Man United team is always a great bit. That's one of the best trivia ones where you're talking about name the team that played that night, and the one that always escapes people's mind is Jesper Blomqvist started that final. He snuck into that Champions League final. He's always the one that people miss. Jesper Blomqvist got in there. Was it when Keane was out and Scholes was out, if I remember correctly?
I think Giggs plays on the right.
I think so. I think you're right.
Remember that season, there was a goal. The goal against Arsenal that Giggs scores. Remember, the famous one where he had the tap off and he's running like that. He didn't start that game.
He comes off the bench.
Why did he come off the bench? He wasn't all that at this point. Giggs got better as he got older. Well, when he was right young, he was brilliant. And then, what are supposed your peak years? He had a couple of years in and out that United team. But Blomqvist starts that. I'm sure it was Blomqvist who starts ahead of him in the FA Cup semi. That's why Giggs is terrorising teams that late on in the game.
Yeah, he's fresh.
He's fresh. Do you know what I mean? But doesn't even start that one.
Jeez, Arsenal were dead on their feet in that one, because the goal is amazing, but you've got to take into account that Arsenal are absolutely drained at that stage, and they don't even get the energy to tackle them. Now, a team that we brought up on Bustalgia before even this era that we always fondly wax lyrical about, Liam, is Lazio at this stage. This is Sven-Goran Eriksson's Lazio before he goes to England to manage them. This is a team that wins the Cup Winners' Cup next season, and when you look, they win Serie A in the year 2000. But look who he brings in this summer. Marcelo Salas, Christian Vieri, Ivan De La Peña. There's somebody who's got some significance to Celtic. Ivan De La Peña joined them. Dejan Stankovic, Sergio Conceição, and the recently passed away Sinisa Mihailovic. Lazio would win the title, as I say, a year later, but this is him putting the building blocks in place for that Lazio All-Stars team. And at this point in time, maybe Football Italia was like one of the go-to shows for the football fan in the UK back at that time. They were an exciting team. And I remember watching that World Cup, and Marcelo Salas was such an explosive striker up front. But Lazio picked him up that summer, but they were terrifyingly good when you look at the players that they had over the next few years.
I think Italy had the best league in the world at that point, better than Spain. We go on some of these old nostalgias we've done, Phil, where we look at who went for what money. For the next 10 years, it was 8-9 years, it was all pretty well Italy. That's where all the big player movement was. And I think that's where a lot of the inflated prices started coming from as well. I think the other one that broke the structure, it was the Italians,
Yeah.
And now they're signing Scottish players. So, swings them in.
Karma's a bitch, eh?
I see Juventus got a 15-point deduction handed to them tonight as well. Juve and scandal? Well, I never.
Did
there you
they?
go. Aye, they did. Aye. Did you hear the story about all the board members resigned just a few weeks ago, including like Pavel Nedved and stuff like that? So that's another scandal that's right for
that'll
Juventus.
be, by the way, the most lenient outcome they could have found for them.
Probably.
That's what they do. Oh, that is what they do there.
Aye.
So it's like but like the other, the other lot, find the most lenient sort of punishment you can. Where there'll be rules there that technically, if they're just applied, I bet you any money Juve should have suffered more than that. but they'll be getting goodwill for acting swiftly and all the board members resigning and all this bullshit. But I bet you if they had like what their first brainstorming meeting about what the fuck are we going to do here about this, I bet you, Liam, right, the Italian FA have went, right, what's the most lenient punishment and what's the worst case scenario here? I bet you 15 points would have been the most lenient, and they found a way to do that. Bet you any money.
Oh, I mean, there'd be riots in the street if you did it any other way. If you came down hard on a team like that,
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I think they always they factored it in as just part of how they do business. Is that sometimes you're going to get caught now and again, and it wasn't about what you did. It was just getting caught. So that was a fine you paid, and that was it. And they always sort of knew that, moving forward.
It's Italian football and corruption, especially Juventus, it goes hand in hand. And even when the whole thing kicked off in the mid-2000s with the match fixing, it was, I believe, Fiorentina got an even harsher penalty than because Milan get fined, Lazio get pulled into, they get fined, Juventus get put down to Serie B, which isn't really much of a drop. But if I remember, Fiorentina get dropped to Serie C, they go down 2 divisions.
See, it was 2 or 3 divisions they went down. Might even see 3 or 1, eh? It was like they got properly. And then I think did they not have to do the whole, Sevco thing as well? Did they have to become...
Well, Parma definitely did, and so did Fiorentina. Parma had to sell the UEFA Cups they won.
I think Fiorentina
did, aye.
They had a different name at one point, and then it just kind of came back.
Aye. No, you're right. There's been a few Italian teams that have went through that process as well. But see, Parma actually literally had to sell their history in terms of selling the physical trophies, because they actually had to sell the UEFA Cups that they won and stuff like that to raise money as well. That's how desperate it was for them. But see, it all caught up to them after years and years of all sorts of corruption in Italy. And yeah, at this point in time, Italian teams are spending hand over fist, because Inter Milan were also big spenders. They brought in Nicola Ventola and the goalkeeper Sebastian Frey that summer. Barcelona in Spain, they're synonymous with Dutch players over the years. Patrick Kluivert and Bo Zenden headed to the new camp that summer, and the man that scored the winning goal at Euro 96 to win Germany the tournament, Oliver Bierhoff, signed for AC Milan that summer. So that was your big movers and shakers. As for your pop culture headlines, when the season kicked off on the 1st of August 1998, of smack bang in that sort of Britpop sort of time in the late 90s, the Spice Girls were number 1 in the charts, which wouldn't surprise many people. Hilariously, though, number 1 in the album chart, wasn't expecting this, was Jane McDonald. I was like, what? How the hell did that happen? And number 1 at the UK box office, if you fancy going to the cinema on the same day, was Godzilla, was number 1 at the box office that year. Now, as for T in the Park, who was the headline act, it was The Prodigy and Pulp on the main stage headlining. Ash and Portishead headlined the NME stage. Other notable names that appeared at T that year included the Beastie Boys, Stereophonics, Robbie Williams, Catatonia, Travis, Space, Garbage, Ian Brown, he always pops up. But before the Kasabian era, so it's Ian Brown is taking Kasabian's slot before they happened, Russell. He's always at these things. Super Furry Animals appeared soon, Fatboy Slim, and Natalie Imbruglia, who was very much a timestamp of 1998 with that song Torn. I was like an anthem that year, so yeah, she's everywhere at this point in time. And as for Glastonbury, Primal Scream, Blood, and Pulp were the headline acts on the main stage. You get a lot of big acts that appeared at Glasgow that year, including the Foo Fighters, Stereophonics, Jules Holland, Robbie Williams, The Lightning Siege, James, Sonic Youth, Ian Brown again was there, and Bob Dylan had the Legends slot on the Sunday, because there's always one in the Legends slot. It was Bob Dylan that year. So now, let's move on to the very controversial pre-season roundup for Celtic going into this season, because, yeah, it's all sorts of dramas, as I said earlier on. We've won the league at the end of the 98 season, first title in 10 years. We've even added a League Cup. Even though a year before, the club were panned, a lot of fans were like, who? Wim Jansen? Who's this guy? But he clearly won the fans over. Even had a bit of a rocky start. Lost the first 2 league games to Hibs and Dunfermline, but we did recover pretty quickly. He brought in guys like Henrik Larsson, Craig Bulgley, Paul Lambert. Got together, we won the league. Everything's good, everything's hunky-dory. But in the build-up to that final game, this is long before the days with the internet is the juggernaut that it is now, but there was rumours. Back in the old days, we had to know somebody that knew somebody. They would tell you, oh, I heard this is happening. I heard it's not all good behind the scenes at Celtic. And lo and behold, just a few days after the season ended, Wim Jansen Mazowski couldn't work with Fergus McCann and Jock Brown, apparently. All sorts of problems. So from winning the title, we're going back to square one and looking for a manager again. Now, guys, can you remember the name that was the hot favourite with the bookies and in the media before Jozef Venglos was announced?
I was a Danish one, Danish coach, Egil Olsen or something like that. Remember there was
Egil
a lot
Olsen.
Is that him, aye?
Norwegian.
Was he
Egil Olsen. I knew he was
Norwegian?
from one of the Scandinavian countries. I knew that by Egil Olsen. Mm.
Did he go to
Aye,
Wimbledon?
I remember a buzzer and him. Like, that seemed
Yep.
to be the favourite. And, you know, Dr. Joe was a surprise. I mean, he was
Yeah.
great to that, you know.
Mhm.
Another
Aye.
one of the diversions. Well, was anybody else linked to it as well? That wasn't the
When I
Art
was
George.
looking this up, I felt like there was, but I'm thinking more of what happened the year before with Jansen. There was a few different names like Bobby Robson and stuff like that were all linked, but this with the Venglos one, I had this idea in my head that there were more names, but according to the CelticWiki.com, when you read up on it, Egil Olsen's the only one that really gets quoted. I do remember that being the headline. I can remember that being a very strong rumour, but apparently at the 11th hour, he basically pulled out of the deal and it put Celtic back a wee bit because they were pretty much certain it was going to happen. A bit like one Eddie Howe when you think about it, the parallels, where it was like, oh no, the guy we've been chasing for a while has knocked his back now at the last minute. We need to scramble something together. And on the 17th of July, 1988, after Celtic managed to keep it in-house, but there was no social media to post on at that point, they kept it all in-house and unveiled the one and only Jozef Venglos walked out there. And if Wim Jansen garnered a who, well, Jozef Venglos definitely garnered a who type of reaction from the fans because nobody saw this coming at all. But, and again, this is, you know, where the media fail. They did the same with Jansen. They did the same with Venglos, where I know, as I said, the internet isn't the juggernaut that it is now, but, you know, journalists and that have got all sorts of connections. They could have done their research at that point. You'd actually find out Jozef Venglos, Russell, he did have a bit of pedigree behind him. And it turned out that he was on Fergus McCann's wanted list long before we actually appointed him. But yeah, he'd managed the Czechoslovakian national team and Slovakia. He'd been Aston Villa manager, Fenerbahce manager, Sporting Lisbon manager. Had a few big names on his CV. But yeah, right away, they just trashed him right off the bat.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at those clubs, you look at a list of clubs like that. If that was going to be, you know, don't worry, I'm not saying Andrew's leaving. But if our next manager was someone who'd been in charge of Fenerbahce, Sporting Lisbon, Villa, national teams at tournaments, international tournaments, you'd be going, he sounds all right. You know, he sounds okay to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a wee bit of appearance stuff as well. I think, you know, when you look like the old granddad sort of thing, and they decide that they make their mind, oh, he's going to be a dirty old man or whatever. And this is a guy that was recommended by Gerard Houllier.
Yes, Gerard Houllier.
Gerard
In fact,
Houllier.
now that you mention that, was it no Houllier was in the front, one of the front runners, or maybe that was the season before with Jansen, but Houllier definitely recommends Venglos, and it's as a result of him not coming to us.
Houllier turned us down and says, I've got a guy for you. And it was Venglos, but we didn't opt for Venglos.
Yeah.
We went for Jansen. But very much the recommendation for Venglos was based on, what the fuck was it he did? He had revamped some sort of, some sort of youth setup somewhere. And Houllier was like, this guy's a genius. What he's done. So whatever the connection was, someone could check it out on Google.
Aye.
I probably should have done that before the show.
Aye.
Because there is a story about Houllier highly recommending him because he revamped either a youth setup or a tournament, how a tournament should go or something like that. He was something to do with fucking FIFA or something like that, and I don't know. But Houllier seemed to know of him very well, and he's the one who I think has given that as a wee bit, you know, a name on a bit of paper for Fergus to chew over, and then eventually they've had to. Eventually they've chose to go down that road.
Maybe it was because obviously in the 90s, the Czech Republic national team obviously got to the final Euro 96, and a lot of the players were very highly sought after. Maybe he had a say in the sort of grassroots level in the Czech Republic, and that's why guys like Nedved and Poborský and that all came through. Maybe he had a say in those type of things, like improving the facilities and whatnot. Could be something along those lines, maybe that you're thinking of. Say something rings a bell in my head that you had influence somewhere, but I'm just thinking the timeline. I'm like the 90s. The Czech Republic did kind of bust on the scene in the mid 90s with some of their players, going for big fees. I wonder if he had a played a part in those guys' development along the way. It could be something like that. But he came in, Liam, and what was your initial reaction? Were you doing, as Steve O'Mac said there at the bottom, the Doctor Who classic negativity? Because that headline was the obvious one. It was the open goal for the media. Doctor Who?
So what was his doctrine in? I mean, it was the first time. Did he have a doctrine in football?
I don't know.
He was a doctor, Dr. Jozef Venglos. So he must have a doctrine or something in football, or I know something related in athletics or that. But that was my first question. Was he a doctor? You know,
I was a doctor. It was so unusual to see it, doctor.
And I remember Hugh Evans as well. I mean, like, you can just pick any manager we've had or anybody that's come out that not for the Scottish establishment. And Hugh Evans was always the first one to just jump out and this guy's going to be crap. This guy's going to be useless. And God, see, for a guy, has he ever got anything right? Nothing right. He's always just on the opposite of everything that's like, good in that. And he just takes an alternative stance just to be Hugh Evans. And Christ, no, but it's just 96, we're talking 98. I mean, the old guy's still on the air, still talking shit,
Well, that wouldn't be the only clanger that he'd have, because obviously a little bit later in the season, he has another famous clanger regarding one of our signings, which we'll get to very, very soon. But Hugh Evans, he's got a habit, especially about this time as well, around this Dr. Joe era. He was very scathing about him. But obviously the Lubo Moravcik story.
I think the thing is with Hugh Evans, though, what you need to remember is, the one thing he's very much guilty of is he ties his colours to the mast, whatever the saying is, you know what I mean? And he gives a strong view, but it makes it box office, do you know what I mean? Like, that's still he. There's a reason why that radio station clings to him still. And it's because very few people give forthright views. Now, whilst it's great, this guy is a Celtic fan. Let's remember that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no two ways about it. He's a Celtic supporter. But he also will go outright and say exactly what his gut's telling him at the time. Now, how many times does your gut instinct get it wrong? Now, people could say, oh, well, he should maybe be more considered. But see if everyone's all considered and thought about all you would hear on the radio, right, that day is Dr. Jozef Venglos. Oh, well, we'll just need to wait and see. Oh, yeah, what do you think? Oh, we'll just need to wait and see. Oh, yeah, I think he could be good, he could be bad. We'll just wait and see. It's fucking shite. I would rather hear someone get it explosively wrong, but by giving an opinion, do you know what I mean? Then sitting in that wee halfway house, eating the fairy bit, and I just think I think sometimes there's reasons why he gets the airtime he still gets. Now, it's because he'll still it might be the odd clanger, but it's because he is more than willing to give a viewpoint that will be one way or the other. I'm all for that. I think it's refreshing. I think most folks should be like that.
It's that thing. It's that thing that we talk about on the bus, and it sparks debate. If everybody on this channel just sat here and went, "Oh yeah, just played it down the middle," wouldn't be very interesting. That's why we need people with explosive opinions, and he certainly puts an explosive opinion out there. And if he gets it wrong, he'll say he got it wrong on Lubo. But with the benefit of hindsight, I don't think there was many of us Celtic fans can honestly say in October '98 when Moravcik turned up that we all thought he was going to be what he was. Again, see, the internet wasn't what it was, so we didn't have that benefit of Google right at our fingertips just to go and look this guy up and go, "Oh, Moravcik, this guy's amazing." Watch a YouTube highlight reel and go, "This guy's a fucking baller." None of us had that benefit, and he just, as you say, kind of called it the way it was, but he's never really lived it down. But I say, when you look at it with a bit of context, it's like, well, how could he have known realistically? So you can't just nip onto YouTube and watch a wee montage like that Viduka one that I sent you earlier on, how they banging goals. But no, back to what Venglos said, he was up against it right from the start. Underwhelmed fans, scathing media, injury problems within the squad. A World Cup which had consumed most of the summer and most of the focus there, which a lot of our players went to. That Scotland squad had about 9 Celtic players in it. So, of course, coming back to World Cup, they need a bit of an extra break before coming back into pre-season training, even though Scotland went out in the first round, as per usual. There was a row between players and the board over bonus payments. I have a vague recollection of this as I was reading and doing some research on this. Something rang a bell in the back of my head that the Celtic players were at loggerheads with the board over bonus payments to do with winning the league, if I remember correctly. And I was like, I do remember this. This is ringing a bell. But yeah, it was a messy situation for Venglos to walk into. So much so, the Celtic's transfer activity in the summer, of course, it's before transfer windows officially came in. But if you look at just the summer months, you know, the sort of June, July, August, Celtic signed nobody. Absolutely no one, not a single player after winning the league. Obviously, we lose a manager. See, Venglos comes in. He's not really got time to weigh it all up right away. Can't go into the transfer market initially with all the other problems that are going on. And unfortunately, the thing that adds to that, and this is the optics of it, where across the city, after Rangers lost the league and finished trophyless the season before, they go very aggressive in the transfer market because they are hurting after us beating them at the title. So they brought in Arthur Newman, Van Bronckhorst, Kanchelskis, Rod Wallace, Colin Hendry, Gabriel Amato, Wayne El Charbonnier, and Daniel Prodan. So the optics for a Celtic fan point of view is we've done fuck all, and they've spent absolute fortunes. Now, of course, with the benefit of hindsight, and what would happen over the next few years or the next decade, and what we would find out, obviously changes everything in terms of what's a good thing. We didn't recklessly spend like that. But putting yourself back in 1998, guys, at that point in time, you're like, oh, fuck, man. You know, they are going all out, and we're just standing still, doing nothing. So it was, I can understand a lot of frustration at that point.
It depends if you want us to be completely reactionary to everything they do. Now, this is the difficulty because we can't have it both ways. Because one thing I'm always critical of nowadays or in recent times has been I felt we were reacting to what they did. If they were miles behind, we didn't need to do much. If they get closer, or you know, suddenly we'll be a wee bit more proactive. And it's, I think then you've got a guy coming in like who's came in later in the summer. There'll be guys in the boardroom like Fergus McCann who are acutely aware, Phil, that the spending that is going on over at Rangers doesn't add up, right? So Fergus McCann's like, we're the champions, right? I know the revenues we've made. Yeah, they've got the Nike deal, which will make them more. But I reckon Fergus had a pretty good idea of what they could be bringing in as a football club based on season ticket numbers, the TV deal, because that's the same for them both, prize money, and, you know, merchandise. You might acknowledge that, yeah, they're making more on the kit deal and stuff, but not that much more, right? And I think he would have been like, there's no point in trying to compete with that. Other side to it, I would say, is when you get a guy of the vintage of a Joe Venglos, he is not going to be panicking when he's got aces up his sleeve, as it does seem, you know, and I know we're going to talk about the players he brings in. And maybe he's like, well, there's no point me going out running about trying to sign John Spencer right now. Cares? Do you know what I mean? No, but like nobody cares. Let's just, the team's a title winning team as it is. I've got a few boys that are going to come in time. I know when they're going to be available from, etc. Or we need to do a wee bit of negotiation on them.
Yeah.
Who is it we could get in tomorrow? And we'll have a list of 5 players that will be of that EPL reserve list, do you know what I mean? Or English Championship list, do you know what I mean? Or has-beens. And I think, you know, maybe we've just went, well, we don't need that. That's not going to help us. Go what we've got now. If you're a good coach, Joe, you get the best out of them. And then as opportunities arise for the players you've noted down, we'll then pursue them. There's probably just been a bit of calm. Yeah. But I do agree, flip it and say, the bus is in full flow by then. We're sitting there doing those 3 months going, what the fuck are they doing? How have they not signed someone yet? Of course we are. But that's a fan's gift to do that. Yeah. But I just think from the board and the club's point of view, I think there would have been a bit of, oh, wow, how are they affording that? That doesn't add up. Yeah. It's, you know, so we can't compete with that because that's nonsense what's going on over there. And secondly, Joe's going, I trust myself here. I've got the players. I'm not panicking. I've been around the block for 30 years in football now. It's okay. Just let me work, and I'll get those guys to the best levels I possibly can. Albeit I've came in late in the door, so you're gonna need to accept there'll be a few bumps in the road. But the players I bring in will help, and it's just waiting for the right opportunity or the right time to get their club to bite and take a deal off us, and the player then to come in. But just it's fine. Don't
Yeah.
worry about trying to headline grab, because
Aye.
it'll upset the apple cart and they might not all be that good. It's just a signing for signing's sake. And by
Yeah.
the way, fucking eerie hallmarks of the amount of backing Ange gets in that regard. So you can't have it one way and not the other.
Yeah.
If Ange doesn't panic and says, "Oh, you know, I'm quite happy. I'm not one of those guys. I work with what I've got, and what we do is I can only focus on the guys there." Maybe that was just the same mantra from Venglos, who, like Ange, knew he had a wee list, milking them up from the J League, but from a few obscure names that he knew were going to come in and rock. You just need to wait on Dyson Maeda coming in January. You just need to wait on Mialbi coming in November. You just need to wait on Lubo joining in October, November. And I see it again. It's always important to compare it to the modern era, Liam, and go, actually, I get why fans are panicking, but actually, there may well be, if this was a social media era, a lot of fans, if they had the same loving for Venglos as they do Ange, for whatever reason, they probably wouldn't have. But if they did, who would be saying, "I trust the manager, trust Dr. Joe. In Dr. Joe, we trust. He's been round the block. He's had a trophy-laden career. He's been at some of the biggest clubs in Europe, right? If he's not panicking, why should we?" Because that's what we're told nowadays. So I'm just trying to. It's quite an interesting way of looking at it, Liam. Eh?
Aye, I think you can see the similarities there as well, Dr. Joe and Ange as well. You know, I thought when he did come in, says I didn't know much about him, but I thought the signings that he started making, did he have a bad signing? And he also brought up Burchill as well, which I hadn't seen a lot of players coming through in the last couple of years either. That was first. I mean, that's the first time in a long time I seen somebody being promoted for the, for the reserve team or whatever it was at that time as well. And so I think he had a good eye for a player, and I think he molded. I'd like to have seen what would have happened if he'd stayed around a little bit longer. See if our scouting would have went more Eastern European level as well, because as you said with Croatia and the split up of Yugoslavia and all that time, there was a lot of great players coming out for that. Bulgaria had a strong team that had a good World Cup, the one previous. So all the players were out and about. And again, Croatia, Serbia, there's Bosnia, Herzegovina, I think it was at the time, right? All good teams, and I'd love to have seen. And I know he ended up scouting for us. I would love to have seen what other players he would have brought to Celtic at that point.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. Because what Russell says now, if you remember, Liam, we did the Lubo Moravcik specific Bustalgia, and I mentioned the story behind Lubo's signing, and it's a bit, when you realise what Russell was describing there, it was that sort of calm thing, because, basically, because of when he came in and after the World Cup and injuries and whatnot, players away for a longer break and all the carry on at the start of the season. Once things had calmed down and he did have a chance to assess the squad, as the story goes, and I heard this on a podcast with Jock Brown himself years ago. He did an interview with Harry Brady on the Celtic Underground, and I listened to it, maybe like 2013 or something he did it, and he talked about the signing of Lubo. It says after Dr. Joe had a chance to, first 8-9 games and assess where the squad was and get an idea, he sat down with Jock and said, right, a great team has 3 world-class players at least. At the moment, Celtic have 1, and it's Henrik, obviously. But he says, I know somebody that could be the second one, and obviously he described Lubo Moravcik. They went out to watch him in a European Championship qualifier for the Euro 2000. Slovakia were playing Portugal. Portugal beat them 3-0, but John Brown says Moravcik was unbelievable. This guy was running the show in the middle of the park for Slovakia. He took every set piece. If it was a corner on the left side, he would go over and take it. If it was a corner on the right side, he would take it. Free kicks also. He's 2-footed. He's watching this guy, and even though the result didn't go Slovakia's way, he was like, this guy looks a player, by the way. This could be a good one. And when they met with him after the game, they had to speak to him through obviously an interpreter, and Jock Brown obviously got around to the idea of, would you be willing to sign for Celtic? And turns out Moravcik wasn't actually interested at first. He was like, no. But then Moravcik supposedly had said that, but for Dr. Joe, I will play anywhere. To which Jock Brown was like, well, that's good, because he happens to be the Celtic manager. And that's how Lubo Moravcik ended up a Celtic player. And it was one of those aces up the sleeve, as it turned out to be, a bit like what you're talking about, Russell, with the Ange parallels, where he's a bit calm and he's like, don't worry, I know a few, under the radar signings that we can go and make here. And
it's just a wee sort of quiet confidence about, okay, they might not know who I am yet, but they will fucking know. And that was maybe how Venglos felt. Yeah, I think there is a wee bit of like ageism involved as well with Venglos. I think there was a bit of, I think there's an element of, you know, the dotty old man sort of thing. And then we don't even need to do our homework on a Moravchik. You know, we don't need to do that. We'll just slate him for the get-go. I think, you know, I know we're going to talk about the players, but, you know, when you go through them, it's seriously impressive what he brought in. And it did add to, as I say, a title-winning squad.
It did. But something else I want to just pick up quickly before we finish up the pre-season roundup. And this is something that we've covered before, Russell, because we always like a wee side story every season, because obviously we concentrate on what Celtic did. We'll keep an eye on what our biggest title rivals, which usually are Rangers. But a couple of weeks ago, we did a show about Strachan's first season and Hearts, with the team making all the moves because of this injection of money they got from Romanov. But this season, there was another team that pushed the boat out with a bit of ambition for their level. And sadly for them, it would massively backfire a couple of years later, because this is at the time when Scottish football had probably its best deal with Sky at that point before the renewal came up in the early 2000s, and then we walked away from it. But Motherwell got a bit ambitious, a bit too big for their own boots. It was John Boyle, their chairman, who I believe is the owner of Barhead Travel. He decided to, you know, splash the cash and try and make Motherwell into a bit of a force, bringing in guys for their level. Keep in mind, like John Spencer. Pat Nevin came in as like a player/director of football. We had like this weird role when he was a director and a player. Brian McClare came back to Motherwell.
That is unheard of. That has got to be the only one that's ever done that in the history of football.
Has to be. They had Don Goodman, Keith Lasley joined for the first time, Jed Brand. They spent basically a lot of money and were paying them a lot of wages at Motherwell.
Stephen Nicholas was still in Albion too. But I don't know if you remember, he was hot. Like Stephen Nicholas, I think, had options to go English Championship in that straight for still in Albion. And he chose Motherwell, and I'm like, again, not saying he was like fucking Stephen Nicholas, oh my god. But I didn't, because I was still in Albion, we used to go to a lot of the games then. And Nicholas was a brilliant young player. And they managed to out, I think it was like Derby County and stuff for him, if my memory serves me right. And we were all shiting ourselves like that he was going to leave. But one of the things was with Nicholas was that at least he'll get a good career out of sort of thing. That because he'll go down to England. He went to Motherwell, and everyone was like, I wasn't like diehard still in Albion. I was Celtic, right? But I would go the odd Saturday to Stirling Albion. It was like
local team,
£5-6 to get in, So I knew I would watch them with a keen interest still. And Stephen Nicholas was linked with plenty of clubs. I think even Everton. I'm sure, because I think he was linked with Everton, and instead a year later they signed Ian Turner for Stirling Albion, the goalkeeper.
Oh yeah,
he remember he played a few games. He was shite against Man United one game.
I remember the name for champ manager, Ian Turner, the sub goalkeeper.
So Everton had scouts, but I am positive I'm right that the reason Everton scouts were up at Fourth Bank was for Stephen Nicholas.
Wow, okay.
And so when he's went to Motherwell, yes, Motherwell signing still an Albion player in shock story. Bhoycie, try sell that. No, that might not be it, but the competition for him was such that actually, how are they persuading Stevie Nicholas not to go to the bright lights of down south and the big cash and come up to the SPFL? I'm going to guess he was on a handsome contract.
I think so, aye. Would definitely, so Motherwell were definitely spending beyond their means. I say we had a lucrative TV deal at the time with Sky for Scottish football standards anyway.
Gorham as well, that's right.
Andy Gorham and all, aye.
I forgot that was the summer, wasn't it?
Yep, 1999 season, aye. But one of the hindrances of the TV deal, if you remember, and this would come back and haunt the league during the season, was the 6:05 kickoffs on a Sunday night. Because that would play a big part in a certain fixture near the end of the season. Because obviously the Celtic Rangers game went ahead at 6:05. It was a highly combustible night, and people were allowed to drink all day. And of course, emotions spilled over that day. But the 6:05 kickoff was a big problem. But we were at the mercy of Sky because of the deal they were giving us. But as part of that, I say Motherwell decided we're going to push the boat a bit here.
See, when you see the mercy of Sky, Phil. And by the way, NM, just doubling down my point, 100 grand. Is what Motherwell paid for Stevie Nicholas. That's quite mad, isn't it? I remember it at the time because we were all like, fucking how's he going to Motherwell? I'm telling you, I think he was maybe, let's speculate, because let's do Hugh Keevans. I'm going to say he was on $2,000 a week at Motherwell then. Something like that. I reckon. Yeah, why not? Throw that out there. But you don't see this at the Mercy.
There you go, Liam.
Hey!
Dr. Joe was awarded a PhD in physical education from the University of Bratislava in 1955.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Celtic. Is that how Arthur Newman says Celtic?
Yeah,
Celtic.
But yeah, he'd been a doctor for 43 years by the time he joined Celtic.
Wow.
Aye.
Jeez.
That's mental. Right, so you say at the mercy of Sky. I don't like that, right? And I read it in the notes and I thought, look what the Premier League does now. Saturday evening games work. I think it was great that Scottish football was at the front of an innovative new time. Yeah, it wasn't great for fans, and I get that. But now, look at it now, and it's BT were the first ones to do the English Premier League in the Saturday night.
Yep.
And then Sky liked the look of it, and they took it off them because they've got the presidency still in the banks of fixtures that they take. So I think at that point, you get the value for your product based on many factors, not just what you're producing on the pitch, but given the channel, or the broadcaster, I should say, a time slot that works in their schedule. And Saturday night football, not in my lifetime had I ever thought of Saturday night football, Liam. Sunday football, Italian, was Super Sunday on Sky at 4, and the Italian league. And even the Italian games kicking off at like 5, 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening was bizarre to me.
Yeah.
But it was unique
that
because it
as
gave
well.
you a time slot.
I think they were copying a lot of the North American model. North American model, like hockey night in Canada, that's every Saturday night. You know, Saturday's a big sports night in North America. You get basketball, hockey. I think you're even getting NFL on a Saturday night as well. You know, and I think that all started just a way of, it's like broadening the TV revenue. Get as many eyeballs as you possibly can, and that works for the advertisers. And for them to have all the games as a league all playing at one time, that didn't suit them. And so they were the ones that just like, okay, and we're going to get it out across a whole weekend. And it was always got some sort of product on the box.
See, from reading up for this, I remember the 6:05 kickoff time, but I wasn't sure if it was a Saturday night or a Sunday night. And from the evidence I read, the Shame game was a Sunday night, and I'm like 6:05 on a Sunday night. And it's like, from a football fan point of view, I just want to see Celtic as quickly as possible during the weekend. I don't have to wait till 6:05, but I say it comes back to haunt them in a way, because that's the reason why we don't get many Celtic and Rangers games now in the evening. It's because they try to get them played as early as possible in the day, because guys go to the pub and basically get blitzed and then go to the game.
So it's a lazy argument. You tell me guys that aren't getting blitzed going to those games.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
At 4 in the morning.
Yeah,
they're on at 6 in the morning. They'll just do an all-nighter. I mean, it's just daft. But the other thing about it was, you also need to contrast and compare it to how it works now. And I think when you look back, you would have to say, I think Sky were giving SPL a hell of a lot of credit. And we, with wee man syndrome, as we tend to do in Scotland, are going, 6:05, they're treating us like the gutter. Well, look now at the coverage you get. And I would say it was far more than investment. It was Martin Tyler still doing the commentary for the big games.
Up till when the montages I watched, Ian Crocker's definitely doing it this season, but up until about 97, it was Martin Tyler and Andy Gray.
And they were definitely investing in like sort of promo for it. Yep. And I think the money that was getting spent on the SPFL for the TV deal as a whole was far more like richer, even though it's less than what the current TV deal is, and they'll call it a record deal now. Actually, if it had moved with the times, if it had carried on escalating, it would be way, way higher than what it currently is, based on how high it was back then. Wee bit of trivia. What was the intro credits theme song for this season on Sky?
I don't know the name of it, but I can remember the wee boy at the very end with the saltire painted on his face. Yeah. I can't remember the name of the song.
You're close, Liam. It's not that.
She Sanctuary by the Cult, or was it Alive and Kicking by Simple Minds?
No,
Premier League.
that was the Premier League live at kicking. It was a one-hit wonder, a Scottish band,
Yeah.
rock, heavy rock,
Yep.
Rumple, and what's the word? Stiltskin.
Right,
Is
okay.
it, no, it was a band just called Stiltskin. No,
Stiltskin, okay, right.
Stiltskin, and the song was called Inside.
Right, okay. Aye. Yeah.
Oh, it was so good.
I can remember the boy at the end with the soul tire painted on his face. I can remember that right at the very, very end of it when it comes up the title. Aye, I could.
Because it was like the choir at the start.
Yes.
And then I was like, but I used to get you psyched, man.
Yeah.
You should bring that fucking back. Let's start a campaign. Bring back Stiltskin Inside for Scottish football on Sky rather than some generic silly song that you don't need to pay any copyright for.
Be some
Get
stock
that
music.
Inside back, because that used to get you psyched because it was quite an eerie choir, and then like even the video promo looked like they invested a wee bit more time. You know more about that than me, Liam, but it looked like they when they were going to make this look really engaging as an intro, and I think now you look at it, it's just so generic and a bit bland, isn't it? It's a bit vanilla. Ice cream.
It is a bit vanilla, aye. Aye, that's one way of putting it. It's those. Well, there was one a few years ago where it was all the different fans, but like the what was it, the St Mirren fan in the pub? On St Mirren, it just cut to different fans. Aberdeen, Dundee United, Celtic, and it was like a fan going on Celtic, and it's just like, come on, guys, put a bit more effort in. You're better than that, as Chris Sutton again would say. But no, that's just the way Scottish football gets treated on Sky. Now, before we go into the musical break, I'll just quickly tell you what happened in the pre-season games for Celtic. We had a wee small tour of Holland, beating a few amateur teams out there before we came back to play Ray Montgomery of Kilmarnock. As testimonial, he chose to play Celtic. We went out to Rugby Park and beat them 2-1. We had a 2-1 victory over Tottenham at Celtic Park, followed by a 1-1 draw away with Bolton. And we lost 1-0 to Liverpool at Celtic Park in the final pre-season game. And amongst those friendlies, though, we obviously had the Champions League qualifiers, our first crack at the Champions League. We got by St. Pat's Athletic in the first qualifying round, but we would come up against Croatia Zagreb, now known as Dynamo Zagreb. They were Dynamo Zagreb, then they became Croatia Zagreb, and then changed back to Dynamo. They obviously beat them 1-0 at Celtic Park. Darren Jackson scored, but then they trounced us 3-0 in Zagreb. But there would be a player that would catch the eye there that would come back to play a part later in the season. Obviously, Mark Viduka. We'll be getting on to him soon. But this game, obviously, many fans fondly remember it as well for the display of one Robert Prosinecki. He was a rather talented Yugoslavian midfielder who ran the show. Despite a very heavy smoking habit, he was.
That makes it better. That makes it better.
That's a maverick, isn't it?
Was he not smoking at half time when he played us in Zagreb? I think there was a picture of him on the pitch having a wee one before he went in the tunnel.
It's not a problem, eh?
Do you remember the fans that night as well? Do you remember the Croatian fans in Zagreb as well? They had the taps off, and it looked like a cold night as well, but they just looked absolutely. They were burning their arse and all that. It was like it just looked like hell, you know. It's like I hadn't seen fans like that in a while, you know. That was my first taste of Eastern European football.
They absolutely trounced us over the two legs in the end. We had our hopes up after Darren Jackson gave us a 1-0 lead, but it wasn't enough. We got absolutely done in the away leg, and we were out of the Champions League. We would drop down into the UEFA Cup. This wasn't like the Bratislava situation with Strachan. We still had the UEFA Cup to play, but spoiler, we don't go very far in that one. And of course, on the first league game of the season, we would kick off against Dunfermline, a rather controversial moment before the game where Fergus McCann, while giving a speech to the crowd, was booed by the fans. It's something that still gets used to beat Celtic fans over the head with when you talk about being ungrateful and spoiled. You talk about the fans that booed McCann. As I said, though, earlier on, when you take all the context in of what happened that summer after winning the league, the manager leaves. You don't have the internet at this point at your fingertips to try and get an inside scoop of what's happening. You can only go by what's basically presented in front of you. It looks like Jansen's been forced out by Brown and McCann. We've brought in a manager that nobody's really heard of. We've watched our rivals across the city spend ridiculous amounts of cash. We've not brought in a single player. Some fans were pretty angry on that day, but of course we ended up winning 5-0 on the first day of the season. And funny enough, despite all of Rangers spending, they actually lost 2-1 on the opening day to Hearts at Tynecastle. So suddenly, after the first round of fixtures, you're like, maybe there isn't anything to worry about. 5-0 win to start the season against Dunfermline. They got beat after all the hype So maybe we'll do okay this season. But as I say, we'll put in the musical interlude and then when we come back, we'll get into this season. Because unfortunately, the hope didn't last too long with the way it started. It quickly went downhill. So stick in the old musical interlude just now, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes, guys.
When you've all that stuff at the start, they won't be playing Tina Turner on the coach on the way home, will they?
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan. He's a Rangers puppet. He's a cheerleader. That's what he is.
Yes, and we are back, folks. So let's get into it. 98-99 season. As it says at the bottom there, first impressions, they are everything. Jozef Venglos, he's got a lot of people to win over. So it starts really well with a 5-0 victory over Dunfermline. Craig Bultley actually scored a hat-trick that day, one of the very few people who scored a hat-trick on the opening day of the season for Celtic. But yeah, Craig Bultley from midfield bagged a hat-trick. I think Malky Mackay scored his last ever goal for the club as well. He left not long after that.
Who was in the stands?
What's that?
Who was in the stands?
Who was in the stands?
Director's box.
Oh, Wim Jansen and Murdo McLeod were invited there for the game.
What the fuck is all that about?
Apparently it was Brian Dempsey invited them as well. I can remember watching the highlights on the sports scene and there was a big thing about them arriving outside the crowd.
How can the relationship be that good that they can come to the first game but they can't work there? Like, when you add it all up, like, there's something missing there to me. Like, if you had to leave after a season, then that means, like, fucking hell, like, that's when Pete Tong, right? And everything's, that relationship's dead in the water, Liam. Do you know what I mean? First game of the new season, the manager who fell out with everyone, or vice versa, is sitting at Celtic Park just watching the new manager. It's
like inviting your old girlfriend to your wedding. It's like inviting your old girlfriend to your wedding, It's like, it's awkward for everybody. I'm surprised they went.
That's what I don't get. This is what I don't get, because quite clearly, Wim Jansen had the courage of his convictions, essentially, to go, I ain't happy with that. I'm off skate. I know it's been a great season, but I'm not doing this. That tells me there's a fallout of sorts, right? A big fallout. Back to what? I just don't know. You think with stuff like that, if that tells me there was bridges that could be built.
Yep. There was. Apparently, according to when I was reading up on the Celtic Wiki, Brian Dempsey invited them as his guests, and he's described on the Celtic Wiki during that whole debacle as the stirrer. So that's how he was viewed. He was trying to stir up a wee bit of controversy, I think, at that point in time. But yeah, I mean, it's weird that after all the publicised falling out, that they're quite happy to go back and I mean, they did win the league, but yeah, it just seems strange after all the headlines about an explosive falling out and all that. And yeah, they're more than happy to just turn up and watch Jozef Venglos' team instead. It was bizarre stuff. So they didn't affect it too much on the park. What happened? So they won 5-0, and of course the news that weekend so the Rangers lost 2-1 at Tynecastle as well gave us a good start, but it quickly went downhill because literally the very next league game we would lose. And Russell, we talked about that kit at the start, and we go back to the story ages ago. I think the first time you wore that kit on the show when I was on with you, and we talked about it afterward, and you asked me who's the first player that I think of when I see that kit. And unfortunately, I think both of us had the same answer. Reggie Blinker scoring a horrendous own goal at Pittodrie always sticks out in my head. Jonathan Gould comes for a cross, and Reggie Blinker just tries to cushion a header back to him, completely misjudges it and heads it right over him into the net. And it's like, oh my God, they end up losing 3-2.
I watched that, right? I watched it back tonight. See if you actually look at his face. I actually feel a wee bit sorry for him, because I just think that was almost like an inevitability that another error was going to come for Blinker. Like, Blinker had a reputation. This was, I think Steve was saying in the comments, well, this is one of Wim Jansen's go-to guys. You know, it was someone Jansen was desperate to bring in. And I do think like Blinker almost knew there and then, like, no matter what I do here, it's going to be a fucking night. He looks scared. Do you know what his face is at? But he actually looks like the sun just dawned on him, like, this is just, it's just sometimes the wrong fit. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just isn't going to happen. I'm sure he had about 20 odd caps for Holland, did he not?
He lost a lot of the crowd support when he played that away game that we were talking earlier, away to Croatia Zagreb. Remember, he shot out a tackle there. It was really, really obvious. It was a 6-40 in his favour, and he just completely did not have the courage or the conviction to go in for it. And I think that was a lot of time where just everybody sort of wrote him off. But I mean, how bad a performance is it when Ian Wright ends up making Cockney rhyming slang about you? Do you remember he was talking
having
about
a Reggie Blinker?
Reggie Blinker, and he was that all the time, a Reggie. I remember that all the time, you know. See if there was social media around then, that would have been, I think that would have really took off. You know?
It probably would have. Hashtag having a Reggie. Definitely would have. You could see it all over Twitter. But yeah, he didn't have the best nights that night. I've seen Patrick saying in the comments about we weren't even in the game that night at Pittodrie. Apparently, Dean Windass did the damage to us that night. Dean Windass.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
It was V2, and it didn't get much better because the midweek after that game, hold on the League Cup that we'd picked up the season before was over at the first hurdle. Wearing that kit again, we were knocked out by Airdrie 1-0 at the brand new stadium that they'd the Excelsior Stadium, the Shivan Excelsior, the new stadium that they had. That was one of the first games there. They beat us 1-0. We were out the League Cup, so yeah. Three domestic games in, and we're already out the League Cup, and we've lost a league game, and we did get it back on track against Dundee United with a victory, but then Celtic would draw 3 games on the bounce against Dundee, Kilmarnock, and incredibly, we'd actually go to Ibrox and draw 0-0. And I remember this game, we could have won that game. This is a game where Henrik Larsson hit the bar with one of the most ridiculous saves I've seen. It was Lionel Charbonnier was in goal. They only signed Stefan Kloss yet, Charbonnier, and it was one of these perfect cross into Larsson. He connects brilliantly with it, and Charbonnier, it's literally like the fingertip he gets on it to put it onto the crossbar. It's like we actually had probably the best chance of the night. And we end up drawing 0-0. But bottom line was this: it was 3 games without a victory. I said it would get worse, of course, because a team that would become a real pain in the backside that season, St Johnstone, would beat us 3 times out of 4 during this season, and they beat us not long after the draw at Ibrox. I say it would they'd come back and haunt us a few times, so they lost St Johnstone at home, and then could only manage a draw with Hearts. So Celtic now found themselves in a position where they'd gone 5 league games and had a cup game in between that without a victory. That's 6 domestic games without a win. But when they finally got a win away at Motherwell, unfortunately, another draw around the corner, we were drawn on film. So already, Liam, this guy's just taking, hit after hit in terms of he just can't get out of the line of fire, Venglos, because every time we get like a win, We can't seem to get like a 2-game winning streak, a 3-game winning streak. It's like, get a win, then we draw a game, or we win, we lose. It was just like so stop-start for the first quarter of that season, wasn't it, Liam?
Oh, it was like trying to start an old car, wasn't it? I mean, just didn't look. I mean, that was the thing as well too. And you know, I remember everybody was like, "Oh, what have we done here?" You know, maybe Dr. Joe's know the answer, and there was a lot of criticism and all that as well too. And I remember going into that first Rangers game of the season, not feeling confident at all. I thought we were on a hiding. You know, I really thought I did not. I was doing well that day. You know,
I thought we played okay. I thought we played okay that game. You know, but slow starts are going to happen when you bring in guys for completely different cultures. And again, this is why if you don't make your mind up early, get a yes or a no early, and then move on to your next option. The longer you leave it, if you lower down your list of options as a manager, Phil, right, are going to be guys that have less and less experience of the climate over here, whether it be British football or whether it be Scottish football, etc. You know, the stupider or the harder, the tougher the task you're making it for that manager, the stupider the decision is going to look at an early spell, because inevitably the bedding in period is going to be there. It's going to exist. And I just think, like, you know, for me, it's like if Venglos is on your list, right, as your second choice, behind Egil Olsen or whatever, find out of Egil Olsen during that World Cup, before the World Cup.
Yeah.
Then focus your attention on Venglos and get, you know, because there would have been someone else perhaps further down the list that might have been able to adapt far quicker, might not have methods that far removed from the year before that. Okay, might not be as high an option, but due to the timeline of the summer, might make sense. I think sometimes when you bring in a manager with completely different experiences, a completely new way of thinking, a new way of playing, a doctorate in PE. I mean, I think I just think like they're the ones that need the longest summer, not the shortest. Look what they did to Postecoglou. I mean, you look at him, you go, fucking hell. If he was always, as you claim, second on the list, then I could have told Eddie Howe wasn't coming in about fucking 6 weeks before he decided he wasn't.
Yep.
You know? Albeit Tam O'Shanter was telling us, these sources that it was still getting done.
Or Jack Ross was going to be the next Celtic manager. Remember that? Shocker. I try not to remember that one. But yeah, this is around about the time. There's no transfer windows at this point. There's no strict, like, August 31st, can't sign any more players. We could sign players throughout the entire season. So after we beat Motherwell and then drop points again by drawing 2-2 with Dunfermline, it's around about this time the Celtic finally get active in the transfer market, and we do a wee double swoop, a wee double signing. Wubel Moravcik came in, but he wasn't actually officially the first signing that season. The first signing was one Vidar Risev, who we mentioned actually during the 98 World Cup show we did, because he sets up Havard Flo for the goal against Scotland, Russell. Remember that? He crosses it for the left wing.
Vidar Risev. Here's the question I'll put to you, Liam. Very simple. What position was Vidar Risev?
I think he was right back.
Fucking I think he played everywhere. I don't think there's one position we didn't try him at. See, think about it, and I couldn't tell you now what position Vidar Risev. Like, if you said to him, Vidar, where'd you place her? I don't even think he knows.
I rated him. I thought he was a good player, Vidar Risev. He had a bit of bite to him, which I kind of liked. Despite him being, he was not the biggest of guys, but he had a dig in him, which I really liked. You know, that Viking blood.
Viking blood. Do you think, though, when we describe him there, and you're right about the position thing, because when we did the World Cup show, he crosses it for the left-hand side, was left foot, but he definitely played on the right at times during the season for Celtic as well. But given the situation Venglos found himself in, Russell, do you think it was quite deliberate to sign a guy who's clearly a utility player that can play a whole plethora of positions? Because there was injury crisis throughout this entire season. There would always seem to be some kind of injury problem that Venglos was contending with. So I think he was very deliberate in his targeting of a guy like Risev, who seems to be comfortable playing defence, midfield. So probably the only place he didn't play was maybe his striker or goalkeeper. But anywhere in midfield and defence,
I bet it was a game he's been tried just off the top. I bet you are playing up. I bet you. Because he was he was popping up in all sorts of positions, Big Vida. But I think sometimes that can go against you as well, because maybe, don't get me wrong, I don't get as bad a game as Juranovic at Ibrox, but it just goes to show you, even when it's your secondary position, like the case is for Josip Juranovic, he's a right back, right? But a right back, right? Jesus Christ. He's a right back who he would definitely be second position as a left back. That'd be his next in the line, right? Of where he can play. And look how exposed and look how shite he's looked there at Ibrox. Vida resets, probably at some point played in his 7th best position for Celtic and getting didn't know about him, by the way. It's like, I've never played here in my life. Do you know what I mean? I'm playing super.
There's Mark coming in to say he thinks of first when he sees that kit, and it's
I get that.
Vida. Aye.
So
he
I
would
think-
score a goal in a cup final a season later. He did score
did.
in that League Cup final. He did do that.
I did. Just one of those ones where, yes, he's a utility player. But it must be like, do you know what I mean? He probably looks back at his Celtic career and goes, if he hadn't been the first signing, but he had joined like as a settled player, sorry, as a settled Celtic team, and he knew who he's competing with for a jersey and for what position, his Celtic career could have been so different. I just think you come in and it's like, listen, you'll be in the team, don't you worry about that. Where? That's a different question. It's just like, he's having to keep an eye out in training. Well, who's picked up a knock? Fuck, where does he play?
I'll be playing
Right?
there this week.
No, it's Johnny Gould.
Liam, here's a name for you, mate, that Alan Woods has brought up, and it's not a Celtic player, but I remember him prominently this season. Nick Dasovic. Remember him, St. Johnston in Canada?
Remember him well. My pal used to be pals with his sister or something like that. It was there a Toronto connection as well. And I think they rented the house across the street for his dad as well. So
Wow.
I remember Nick Dasovic, guy. Yeah, he was in Scotland for a while, wasn't he? Aye, St. Johnston.
Aye, Johnston. Because
It was
in
a
one of the
few
many
years
games that
over
they
at that
beat us
time.
this season, he scores the winner. I'm sure he does.
I think
Dasovic.
Big Jason DeVos was over there at the time as well. There must have been about
Jason
6 or 7
DeVos.
Canadian players that were playing in Scotland at that point.
but
Salteri, I think he was the other one. He was
Aye,
in
rings a
Scotland.
bell. But I remember Jason DeVos, Steph. Was he Dundee United? Was he at?
St. Johnston.
Was St. Johnston as well? Aye.
St.
I remember
Johnston, I
DeVos.
remember
Aye.
Dasovic. He had the long
Aye.
hair. In fact,
He did.
Liam, tell you what, I tell you what, you and Nick should have a wee catch up sometime soon, big man.
Just when I saw the name there in the chat for Alan Woods, I was like, that's right, Canadian international Nick Dasovic was St. Johnston.
Nick Dasovic. And
Aye.
Jason DeVos,
Mm.
total blast from the past.
Aye.
Mark saying United, mate. Dasovic played for St. Johnston as well, I can assure you.
Aye. Aye.
DeVos was United, Dundee United.
Yeah.
He went to Wigan.
Wigan,
um,
okay.
It was Wigan in what's it called? League One, Division 2 it would have been.
Oh, it's an old money
Division
Division 2, yes. Aye.
But Big DeVos was all right. I always thought he was hard. You could always it was an honest graft you got off him anyway.
It was. I would say all these names coming back when I've seen, but when I saw Dasovic pop up there, I was like, I'll need to show that one to Liam. I on Nick Dasovic. I think he scores in the League Cup final that season as well, but Rangers
Yeah,
still
the
beat
long
them.
curtains. The long
Yeah, he
curtains
did.
flowing, and he had he wore like a fucking, like one of those sort of necklace things, like quite a tight one.
Yeah.
He always had that sort of like the St. Johnston collar, then you could see in between he'd have like a wee sort of neck. Why the fuck did I remember that? Fucking hell. But he did. Big Nick Dasovic.
Aye, he was. I'm sure he scores in the League Cup final that season at St. Johnston and Rangers. Rangers beat them, but I remember Dasovic, he scored in that final. It was at Celtic Park before the Hampden renovation was complete. But Rusev's come in, Moravcik comes in at the same time. So we've done a full show on Moravcik. We're about to talk about him in a very, very significant game coming up. But of course, with that game against Rangers looming, Celtic's luck doesn't massively turn around because they lost 2 out of the next 3 games. They lost to Kilmarnock and St. Johnston again. In between that, though, they did beat Dundee 6-1, which is where Moravcik did make his debut. They also were knocked out of the UEFA Cup, getting beat by FC Zurich of Switzerland in between those fixtures. So Celtic headed into the league fixture at Celtic Park with Rangers on the 21st of November 98. The Hoops had played 14 league games. They'd won 5, drawn 5 and lost 4. Rangers were 10 points in front at this stage. We were out of the Champions League. We were now out of the UEFA Cup. We were out of the League Cup. It wasn't going well, to say the least. Everything pointed to Rangers were going to just turn up at Celtic Park that day and just brush us aside and go 13 points clear. But I think it's safe to say that nobody, absolutely nobody, expected what was about to happen, because the game will be forever known as, quite comically, the humping. I thought that was the Destruction Derby. The Destruction Derby is the 6-2 game. This one is just known as the humping on the Celtic wiki. Because, yeah, incredibly, despite everything being against Celtic, they managed to beat Rangers a whopping 5-1. What type of odds would you got at the bookies that day if you'd walked into a Ladbrokes or a William Hill said, I want to put a tenner on Celtic to win 5-1, please? They would have been like, are you fucking mad? Because, yeah, this, of course, is the game when Lubo Moravcik announced himself to Celtic fans, Scottish media and everything, because 11 minutes in, he scores that goal. Is it Simon Donnelly dummies it? He comes across the edge of the area and he just picks the bottom corner with his left foot, picks it out brilliantly, and he's got that sort of shrug of the shoulders. We're talking about David Turnbull celebrations the other night. We're saying, not celebrating. Moravcik that day just didn't really take in the gravity of what had just happened, because, he just put his 1-0 up against the biggest rivals. It was just kind of like it was nothing to him. Like, I do this for fun, no problem at all.
Baffled by it all, I think,
What's a bit?
I do this all the time, mate. Get used to it.
But the most baffling thing, though, before we talk about that, is this was a 3 o'clock game on a Saturday. Yeah. So I'm going to ask the people in the chat, does anybody know why this was a 3 o'clock game on a Saturday? Because it's the last time it ever happened. We've never played a league game against Rangers at 3 o'clock on a Saturday ever again. They've always been on the TV. And this is a point when Sky, as you said, Russell, before the break, Sky were putting a lot of emphasis on Scottish football with the whole Martin Tyler and Andy Gray and all that, a much more flashier intro. Why was this game just played on a Saturday 3 o'clock, non-televised? Bizarre. So if somebody in the chat knows anything, that would be fantastic. But Russell, Moravcik, what a start in the game.
Just as we talk, you just get wee triggers of your memory. I would just like to confirm that at 1 hour 32 minutes, I've completed the trivia question. Excellent. I think I've got the 1 to 11, Liam. Just see what you're talking. Just these things are coming to me, and I'm like, why is that in my head now? Just scroll it down. But I know Jonathan doesn't like me using a pen for some reason, but I think I've got it.
Do you know the entire time this show's been on, I've had a feeling I've been looking at you, Russell, on the other screen and going, he's thinking about the trivia question. I can tell. I was like, there's something on your mind, and I was like, you're thinking about the trivia. I could see the cogs turning. I don't know if the viewers can spot it as well.
Been a bit of that. I've also got, I don't know what I've done, trapped a nerve in my shoulder. It's been bad for a week.
Right, okay.
And it is killing me. So I'm going to need to go to a chiropractor next week, man. I'm like, fucking hell. This getting old things, no for me, man. I'd never go do shit like that, but I'm getting eaten. It's agony. Absolute agony. So apologies if I've looked distracted. I'm in pain.
You're thinking about the trivia, mate.
Well, fucking, if it was that, my ears are in pain listening to you, Bhoycie, you twat. Fucking hell. What was the question?
5-1. Let's talk about this game.
The 5-1 game, the humping, just saying Moravcik. In fact, I know what I'll do before that. I'll tell you the teams, right? And again, this just puts it into perspective of how mad this result is, because keep in mind, all the players that they've signed and what we've done. So Celtic's lineup that day, of course, as we all know, was Tony Warner was in goal because he was an emergency loan for Liverpool. The man known as bonus, because all he ever did was turn up and sit on the bench at Liverpool and pick up his bonus. That was what Neil Ruddock says his nickname was.
Here's a question. Who's had the most free pints ever for a debut against playing their Celtic debut, having never signed permanently, but against them and beating them? He must have. How many pints do you think he's had bought for him over the years?
Oh,
I bet it still goes on now. Someone looking at him. I know he's a wee bit older now, but I'm sure that's Tony fucking Warner. Get him around. Do you know what I mean? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. To think he's came in from Liverpool.
Aye.
Fourth choice.
Well, as I say, Neil Ruddock says that he was known as bonus in the Liverpool dressing room because all he did was turn up and pick up his winning bonus every week because he would just sit on the bench behind David James and never get a game.
Was he on the bench or was he number 2?
Number 2, aye, for a lot of the time. Because at that point, it would have been Sander Westerveld would have came in by this stage, I think. But for most of the 90s, he was number 2 behind David James. But Westerveld's definitely came in as Liverpool goalkeeper at this point, so he's third choice if he's still around. Because David James didn't leave Liverpool right away, did he, when Westerveld joined?
Oh, I think he did. I think he goes to Aston Villa for just like £2 million. It was really cheap.
Ah, okay.
Has one ever been back at Celtic Park for like the windfall draw or anything like
that? Heroes welcome.
That would be a cult hero. Yes.
Who's that?
Oh, that would be one of those like, wow, you're pure deep cut knowledge right there. Like, oh, Tony Warner. He was in goal for the humping in that one. And backline we had Tom Boyd, Stefan Mahe, Alan Stubbs, and Johan Mjalby, who'd literally signed the day before. He wasn't the only person that signed the day before, but we'll get to that later on. Phil O'Donnell, Paul Lambert, Lubo, and Vidar Risef lined up in midfield. Simon Donnelly played just off of Henrik Larsson up front. Rangers team that day was Niemi in goal, who we've talked about before. Perini, Hendry, Wilson, Newman, Kanchelskis, Van Bronckhorst, Alberts, Barry Ferguson, Guy Varsh, a World Cup winner, and Rod Wallace. And Celtic beat them 5-1. Mental. But Ravchik obviously gets all the headlines and phenomenal.
Well, I'm going to take you off on a tangent, mate. I know you're the driver, right? So apologies. But it just feels really good to ask you a fucking question. 5 players to play for and against Celtic that season. Could you name them?
For and against.
The judges came in. I've got one of my Darren Jackson.
That season, Viduka's won. Viduka's definitely won for obvious reason. The transfer window was open, so Darren Jackson, there's a good chance that
I think he's left mid-season. I think Darren Jackson springs to my mind.
Yeah, Hearts, didn't he?
Yes. I think Tosh McKinlay might leave during the season. Does he go to Hearts?
Oh, Tosh McKinlay. I think he went to Kilmarnock after Celtic.
As well?
I think is he one of them, though?
Oh. Well, still Kilmarnock either way.
Well, I'm trying. I think he was away then. I would say he probably is away by that point.
Did we sign anyone from the league?
Signed anybody that season from the league?
I'm trying to resign someone mid-season. Oh, not David Hanna.
David Hanna's a few seasons before, but David Hanna was still a Celtic player at the start of the season. Did he leave midway through and maybe sign for another SPL team?
Was he in the squad still at 98?
David Hanna's still in the Celtic squad.
He goes back to Dundee United, doesn't he?
That must be an answer then. It's got to be.
Oh, there you go.
Got to be David Hanna. It has to be then. He's got to be one of them. And then, let's see, who else? It's got to be a Scottish player. It can't be.
Could Gordon Marshall have been involved?
Gordon Marshall, we only had Jonathan Gill, Stuart Kerr, and we brought in Warner on loan. See, Tom Boyd, man.
Scott Marshall.
Good question.
For us.
Scott Marshall.
I think he played.
Scott Marshall came in for Southampton, didn't he, on loan at the end of the season, and he was dreadful. He was so bad.
Oh, I've got the answers. I'm going to leave you to stew on that, folks. I've got the answers. The judges text me the answers.
Oh, fair dues.
Oh, what?
You don't have the answers in.
Right, he must be including a pre-season game.
Oh, right, okay. Because we played Tottenham in a pre-season friendly. We played Liverpool in a pre-season friendly, so it's Tony Warner, one of them.
Hey!
We played Liverpool, so it's got to be Tony Warner.
We've got them. So, Warner, Hanna, McKinlay, Darren Jackson, Viduka, and then no, which means the judge has got something wrong. He's probably still typing, but he can't see when he's texting. No, Aberdeen he signed for. I don't know what he's on about now. But aye. That's Warner must have signed for Aberdeen.
Oh, I don't think he did he? Let's check that on Wikipedia. Let's have a quick check of that one. Tony Warner. He went to God almighty, let's see.
That was good though. That was actually
Aberdeen.
quite an interesting.
Let's have a wee look. Liverpool Swindon. Oh, he did have a loan spell at Aberdeen, which I have no recollection of. He played for Millwall for 200-something games as well.
Yeah, I knew he did a long spell at Millwall. No, I knew he did well there.
He's had a lot of clubs, by the way. Jesus Christ, he's got around looking at his Wikipedia history there. My God. But yeah, Anyway, that was a good segue. I like a wee bit of impromptu trivia. That was good.
I seen the question for,
Good one.
For the judge, and even Monty was like, "That's a good one."
That's
I
a good
thought,
one.
well, why not? Why not ask Phil a question for a
Yeah, it's a good one. I
me
like
try
that.
to get my own back, Liam. You know.
But Russell, let's in this game. Obviously, we talked about Lubo's goals, but there's a goal that you've talked about before many times about Larsson's first one in this game, where he just like chips it over Niemi. He's through on goal. Was that the one Colin Hendry tries to nearly slides into the goalpost, try to clear it, and he just dinks it over Antti Niemi, just like a wee sort of chip over him, not like the Klaus chip a couple of years later, but in the 5-1 game, the Larson.
It's Colin Hendry trying to close him down.
Aye.
And the outside of the boot's just lifted about a yard and a half off the ground. It's too easy. It's funny because we spoke about Niemi the other week with Strachan's season.
Actually,
I said he's always shite against Celtic. This was the beginning of that. But we were actually talking about him in a Hearts jersey being shite for Celtic. He's shite against Celtic. But honestly, he was awful in this game. And he was awful thereafter against Celtic. He hated playing us. He fucking hated it. But Larsson dinks him with a chip that goes about, I don't know, knee height. Brilliant, eh? But it's a great finish. It's a great finish, to be fair. He's under pressure. He actually gets a push in the back for Hendry just before he does it. But he's just has that strength and the balance just to still, and the presence of mind just still to do the wee dink over the top. And you watch the ball. Yeah. Even then, it's got that much spin on it. It kind of changes direction once it bounces in the ground a couple of times. Classy, eh?
Oh, it is. And Liam, I think it was summed up perfectly by Mark Butchell's celebration and reaction to it when he scores the fifth one, where he just kind of runs away celebrating, just going like that. Like,
I know.
What do you do? What do you say to this? You know, it's like it kind of summed it up. It was surreal. Nobody would have seen that coming, given the form that both teams were in going into the match. But yeah, when Butchell scores, it just runs away like I don't think he knows. Like a young man like that scoring in a game against Rangers to go 5-1 up. Imagine how he must have been feeling.
Was that his debut? That was his debut.
No.
I think he'd I think he played a couple of years before that, but I think he maybe scored in like a couple of games, but this one really announced him on the scene. People come in the chat. People come in the chat and tell us.
That celebration was great.
Better debut. Has it been a better debut for a young boy coming on scoring a goal? Even for a Rangers debut, you know, it was absolutely class, that goal. And I thought, oh God, he looks a player. You know, it's just all this with optimism there. Also thought Mjällby had a great game as well. Like before Ravchik scored his first goal, I can't remember who it was. It was one of the Rangers' better players. I remember just with the 18-yard box, Mjällby stepping into him and just absolutely emptied him. You know, it's just like, I'm thinking, oh, I like the looks at this big Viking as well, you know.
Yeah, definitely. He had a solid debut, but I've just looked up there by Butchell scored. See the 6-1 game against Dundee a couple weeks before. Butchell scores in that one. I just looked it up there on Wikipedia with the results. But he's a goal scorer. But I mean, that's only a couple of games he's played at that point, and it scored against Rangers.
I remember him. He popped up a few times this season with goals. I think he was a natural finisher, natural finisher.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny with folks' careers, because I bet he made a few bob, but he then, because he was at Portsmouth, Ipswich Town, and then I think you make your money then in the Championship over 3-4 year contracts, 2-3-4 year contracts. There you do all right, you know, with the payoff and the transfer fee and all that stuff, and probably one decent contract at Celtic. Not crazy money, but one all right contract there. And then by the time he's 25, he's playing at Dunfermline.
That's right, aye.
And you just think, you go, this fucking frustrating.
Did he have spell at Livingston as well? In my head, playing Livingston and all. Aye, because he did bust. I mean, funny enough, he's actually a massive topic of discussion at the end of the season because Venglos got highly criticised for not including him in the cup final squad, the Scottish Cup final, because he had a good, strong finish to the season. And when we get to the sort of run-in, I've got that as a talking point. But yeah, he had a very strong end to the season and looked like he would be one of those players, a generational talent that comes through the youth team. But he just never really got the Celtic career that you thought he was going to get. But this moment in time really announced him onto the scene. So he does score against Dundee in a league game a few weeks before, but this is the one that he's, people remember fondly. Saying that game, beating them 5-1. And even I say at one point in time we were 3-0 up in the game, and when Van Bronckhorst scored a free kick to make it 3-1, you'd actually get the wee bit of the nerves jangling. But it was only 3-1 for like a few minutes when Larson made it 4. So we just pulled that wee bit ahead of them again. But yeah, an insane result. And Celtic went from a whopping 10 points behind. We cut it to 7 points, guys. We cut the gap. So the pressure was on now. But sadly, as was the case with this Celtic team, every time they were making a bit of progress, well, one step forward, something would go wrong and we'd take a step back because, despite getting it back to 7 points, a bad result wasn't far away. We beat Motherwell 2-0, but then we'd lose at Tynecastle just in the next fixture and then drew 1-1 with Dundee United. Now, I said earlier on about Johan Mjällby. He signed the day before that game, the 20th of November, 1998. And much like the Rusev and Moravcik fight, he was unveiled alongside somebody else. Now, Mjällby, he made his debut. He was right in there. He had a good game, solid game, a memorable game to start in 5-1. But the other guy who signed, he sat in the stands and watched it. And 4 days after officially signing for us, after we pursued him all summer, he decided, I'm not really feeling up to this. I'm just going to jump on a plane and head back to Australia. Because, it is time for the curious case of Marco. Because, when we signed him, after he impressed us with the Croatia Zagreb game at the start of the season in the Champions League, one Marco Viduka, Australia striker, Jozef Venglos obviously had him on his hit list to get him. And it took him a few months of pursuing the guy, but we finally got him in November of 1998. As I say, after he joined, 4 days later, he thought he was too stressed and wasn't in the right frame of mind to play for Celtic and decided to jump on a plane back to Australia. And for 2 or 3 months, I think it worked out, maybe 3 months, because it's February, he makes his debut officially. He just went AWOL. But the funny thing about it was when we signed him, he was Marco Viduka. And when he came back, guys, he was now Mark Viduka. But I remember at the time I was so excited to sign this guy because you've spent, I think it was like $3.5 million we paid for him, around about there, which even nowadays that would be seen as a big fee.
Angie's 5th highest ever transfer.
I know. And nowadays that would be seen as, that's a big outlay for Celtic. But I remember at the time I was so excited about it. And then for like 4 days later for the guy just to be like, nah, I'm away back to Australia. And it was like, can he even do that? Is he like allowed to that? Like, what's going on? And again, without the internet at your fingertips to try and get some kind of information, it was so weird that a player just decided, nah, I'm off skiing. It's like, well, is he left the club officially? Like, what's happened? You were just left in the dark. But it was a surreal moment, Russell, where he was just like, nah, I'm not in the right frame of mind.
Well, you say that, but I also think in a modern era where you look at folks' mental health and stuff, and you go, if the guys, for whatever reason, I mean, it's easier as the outside go, you just signed fucking Celtic. What the fuck you got to be down about? But whatever it may be, whatever demons he's got going on then, I think there'd be a lot more sympathy to it, probably from the club firstly, and whatever's happened is he wouldn't have been flying off in the night. It would be something that would probably be more managed by the club as well, though instead they were probably at loggerheads with him going, get fucking into training, you bastard. He's like, well, fuck you, I'm away. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. I think there's more to it than that nowadays. I think there's more going on in folks' minds. And then, you look at what he's done there and you go, it's a pretty bold move to make if you're just doing it for what? For what? Pantomime? Like, it's not, no one does that. No one does that. You don't fuck off for Celtic, for 4 days after you sign for them unless your head's a mess. And I just knowing at that time you'd have considered investigating what's going on in his head. It was just black and white. He's a prick.
Black and white and grey, because see, when he came here, it probably looks at Glasgow, and you're coming for Australia and Croatia, where sunlight's a big part of your life, and then you go in, and if you have 3 or 4 really bad days in Glasgow, and just like, oh no, this will make me miserable or depressed. Before I moved to Vancouver, that was the thing. Everybody, can you live there? It rains too much, and it does affect you. It does affect you when you have 4 or 5, as you boys know. When you have 4 or 5 days rain in a row, it completely messes you. Vitamin D is a big part of your mental health,
Yeah, there could be a whole plethora of reasons why Russell is right.
There's a number of players I think don't fancy Scotland and that as well, because they want to go play in the sun. You see them showing up at when we're training and all that, and gloves and studies and all that, and I'd rather be playing in Spain or Croatia.
Well, here's another take then based on that. He's been forced to sign for Celtic by Zagreb.
Could be something
He's like, I don't want to go here. Well, you fucking got to, because you'll rot in the reserves if not. Because they're forcing his hand, and he's been forced into a move. I think, sometimes there's a lot more to it. I'm not condoning people just walking out in the club and all that. Of course. We're Celtic fans, and in our eyes. But I think the past few years have taught us a lot, or taught us something. It's that there's a lot more going on upstairs with people than meets the eye. And a lot of the time, it's not always, not saying there isn't pricks out there. I'm not saying in this instance Viduka was or wasn't, but I've probably got a more considered mindset on it now, when I think of the possibles that were going on at the time. And I wonder if he never wanted to join Celtic in the first place. And Zagreb have went 3.75 million or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're going. Like, I don't give a fuck. We're driving you there. He's like, well, I don't want to go. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to Scotland. What are you doing? And his agent's like, you're fucking signing. I'm getting 100 grand out of this as well. Do you know what I mean? And all of this is, he's a young guy. Remember, he was 22? 23? 22, just turned. He would have been, in fact, I know his birthday would have been October 75. So he is 22, just turned 23. He's bonkers as well. You're nuts at that age.
Yeah, of course.
And I've just got a feeling there's more to it than always fucking what we want to. Yeah. We see it from the Celtic prism, which is fine. And I get that. But I think with hindsight, we need to look back at certain examples and maybe just temper your fucking quick judgments on people as individuals too much. I'm not condoning going to Australia for 3 months as being the right course of action, but we're Celtic supporting this enough. We have Celtic aware. He didn't want to sign for them.
That's sort of questions.
Because I tell you what, see with the day he's in that room and he's signing, you will know as a human being if someone's doing this reluctantly or no. So if they're just going, no, we don't care, just get him in. Once he joins us, it's amazing here. And before you know he's joined him, I didn't want to be here. I don't know. Liam, do you understand? I'm not saying everything I'm saying is complete speculation, Liam.
Yeah, of course.
Do you know what I mean?
I think other pressures as well. I remember Roy Keane talking about that as well, about getting players to come up to the northeast, to Sunderland and that. And it was like the wives didn't fancy the boutiques, they didn't fancy the shops. As well, he's grew up in Australia and then he went and played in Croatia. And as far as I know, he's Croatian, right? He grew up with that.
Yes, he's Croatian descent.
So he might have felt very, very home there as well, too. And it's like,
well, where does he live now?
Or his girlfriend didn't want to move away.
He lives in Croatia now, Liam.
I know.
Has a wee coffee shop
back in Zagreb. That's it. You just find it. I like it here. I'm comfortable here, and Leeds.
That's a good way. It's a good way of putting it. But I say, from at that point in time, 13-year-old Phil could only see the green and white of it. Essentially, like, what? I'm so excited to see this guy. And now he's just basically left. I've never seen a player do anything like that before. I was like, what's going on? So he disappears till February, comes back, makes his debut in a league game against Dundee United, but he scored his first goal, funny enough, in a Scottish Cup game against Greenock Morton, who Celtic, of course, are playing tomorrow in the Scottish Cup. But yeah, it was down at Capello, and it's a very typical Mark Viduka goal. And if you've watched that, obviously the montage that I sent you through, guys, it is vintage Viduka. Quick feet, turns, bamboozles the defender, and with the outside of his right foot, sticks it right at the top corner from just on the edge of the area.
That technique was a joke.
It really was.
It's a shambles how good that is.
Yes.
And that is, don't you know what you were missing? Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like, fucking hell. Now, in fact, do you know what? I went full circle again, Phil, and I'm thinking about that goal. I'm like, where the fuck were you going? Get back here right now.
What a goal, man.
Because, of, someone with that in the locker, I mean, it's just, honestly, it's just so good. Like the way he does it, he leans into the right foot. See the way, see to hit it with your right foot, like with that track, you've got to really get over the ball. Like, it's just so nice the way he's done it. I can't do it. Like, but I mean, it's such a nice finish, and even the turn's good.
He's brilliant.
And that was a game. Sorry, Liam.
No, go ahead, Russell.
No, I was just going to say, who was the game against?
I don't know, I can't remember.
Who was it against? It was Greenock Morton.
It was Morton away.
That's what I'm saying, because we're playing Morton tomorrow in a Scottish Cup game, and we played Morton in that one, so aye.
So, you know, if everybody wasn't going to be up for a game, it'd be that.
Aye. I was amazed at looking back at him. I always thought he was like, I thought he was going to be all these like thunder bastards, as you call them, Phil, like going almost all his goals were in the 6-yard box, and he never powered it past the keeper. He was absolutely brilliant of just putting enough pace on it that it just round the net.
Aye.
Unbelievable. Never like, through the ball. Nice wee pace, wee side foot, wee flick here or there, just placing it into the side of the goal. No.
And funny enough, that goal that he scores at Capel, he's wearing that kit that Russell's got on just now. There's a good memory from it, but the goal, see, when you think of Viduka and you get that sort of, I don't want to say it's a lazy thing, but a lot of pundits will always wheel at this for a player who's a big guy. You know, traditionally, most pundits are conditioned to think, a big guy, you know, he's just going to be a lump up front. But when you get one that's got, you know, a bit of technique, he's a good feat for a big man. But when you see that goal for Viduka, that is the epitome of that. The way it just comes into him, he just brushes off a defender. He turns on the ball with the outside right foot. Basically, it's on one motion to put it in the top corner. And it's just like, that is good feet for a big man, to be fair. And that's what he was all about. And when you look at his goals in that montage over the year and a half that he played for us, absolutely incredible goals. Liam rightly says there's not many where he's powering them in from 30 yards. Obviously, just, you know, we side foot here and there, outside of the foot, just brilliant technique and so on. Absolutely phenomenal playing about it. Now, here's a thing though, guys, and I've seen the word come up a few times in the chat. The L word lazy seems to be affiliated with Viduka. Now, I'm going to read out his goal record, because now like we talk about XG and stats and stuff like that. I'm not going to that detailed, but his ratio was he played 48 games in all competitions with a goal return of 35 goals in 18 months for Celtic. When I read that, I was like, I can't believe, because in my head, I'd believed all of the lazy stuff and all that, and I thought, you know, he didn't have that good a record. 48 games in all competitions, 35 goals in all competitions. It's not bad going, isn't it? That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. It's just unfortunate he played in an era of those two Celtic teams, Venglos' one and then John Barnes' team, where ultimately things were going all sorts of wrong.
And he only got 6 of those 18 months with Henrik.
That's right, he did, because of the leg
because of the leg break, and that is. You talk about what ifs. That's the beauty of Bustalgia, Phil, right? Because it is, the where we can go. What ifs, Liam? You know what I mean? And you think 99-2000 season might not be the right management team, but you know what? I think fucking even John Barnes might be able to ride it out at Celtic and win a league title with Larsson and that sort of form. If Viduka can still match that form, that goes the game. And Henrik does what Henrik does, which is eclipse it. You're looking at a barrel load of goals. A barrel load of goals. In fact, if Viduka could score that many without Henrik, how many does he score with Henrik? Because Henrik was the ultimate supplier as well as a goal scorer. So you just think that sliding doors, eh? You know?
I don't think we would have got Chris Sutton if Viduka would have worked it. I think Martin O'Neill would definitely got a tune out of Mark Viduka. I think he's right up in this. You could have moulded a much better sort of role for him within Celtic, and I would have loved to have seen him stay another year or two with Larsson and really get together. I think they would have. Was it Fowler he played with when he went down to Leeds?
Fowler, Q would have been there.
Robbie Keane, Alan Smith, Michael Bridges.
That Leeds team.
He was the best out of all of them.
The 4 goals in Liverpool in one game.
Aye, remember? But he was better than Alan Smith and Bridges and Robbie. Well, maybe not Robbie Keane, but at Leeds he was better than Robbie Keane. That's
of course.
But I think Viduka went down there and smashed it. But again, you play with better players, you know, your game looks even better. And despite him, maybe not us seeing the very best of him, he gets a goal return like that, and you think, imagine that a full season at it with Henrik.
Oh, it would have been a joke, and we'd never got that. But here's the thing: like Shells came in with a comment about Viduka refused to go out at half time during the game. That's the infamous Inverness Cali Thistle game. But knowing what we've talked about already about mental health and stuff like that, this is at a time when Larsson had went down with that injury and Viduka was basically expected to carry the team up front himself. His strike partners changed pretty much on a weekly basis. Mark Burchill, Ian Wright was brought in at the time. Tommy Johnston, who was always in and out of team with injury, he couldn't get a consistent run going. He was essentially the guy we were expecting to carry us through the Larsson injury. Maybe stuff like that got on top of him as well, but it all came to a head in obviously the Inverness Cali Thistle defeat, where he's supposed to win in at half time, 2-1 down at that point, slams his boots on the ground and basically says, "Fuck this, I'm not going out there." Gets in an argument with John Barnes, because Ian Wright's talked about this many times in interviews, saying he'd never seen a player do that before in his life, just like refused to go out. But I say, when you look at we talk about the mental health thing and him going away after just joining, maybe there was part of that as well, where he was just like, nah, this isn't for me. He just couldn't handle it, where, yeah, he needed somebody up front to just help him through. See, that Larsson-Viduka partnership, if it had got the run it deserved, if Larsson hadn't got the injury, the goals he was scoring under Barnes, the first 8 or 9 games under Barnes, we were smashing teams like 7-0, 6-0. And like Viduka, there's one game against Aberdeen, we beat them 7-0 at Celtic Park. And I think Larsson scores a hat-trick and Viduka scores a hat-trick in the same game. And it's like, what a fucking scary good partnership together. Ridiculous. But did you know this though, guys? He wanted to come back to Celtic in the twilight of his career. I didn't realise till I was reading up on it. Apparently during Tony Mowbray's era, and remember Mowbray was signing everybody under the sun, Viduka had made some advances to try and come back to Celtic Park, but apparently Mowbray shut it down. I was reading it on the CelticWiki.com when Viduka's profile, and he said in an interview somewhere his wish was to return to Celtic in the twilight of his career. Actually, one step ahead of you, so I did my research. He would have been 33 years old at the start of that season, so it's not too bad. I mean, Moravchik was 33 when he signed for us. He did all right.
He was born in 1975, so you're wrong.
No, I said for the 1975, so it would have been 2009 for Viduka
So
when Mowbray was
34.
there.
33 in the summer 2009, aye. So approaching 34th birthday. Aye.
But given that Moravchik, I say, signed for us at an age like that, it's not something to be sort of scuffed at. But apparently, in that summer after he'd left Newcastle, he'd maybe put it out there to try and get back to Celtic, and Tony Mowbray apparently said no to it. So who knows? Who knows what could have been there?
Fortuny. Who would you
signed
rather
Fortuny
have?
instead? Aye, he signed Fortuny. Aye. But do you think history will be kind to Viduka? Because he's kind of in a sort of halfway house moment where there's a lot of fans giving him a bit of love tonight in the chat. We've obviously waxed lyrical how good he was and whatever flaws, but there's a lot of people that are still like, nah, fucking lazy bastard, mercenary and all that. How do you think it will be over years to come?
I'll dive in on that straight away. I'll go back to the point I made earlier on. If he had won a league trophy or something like that, despite everything else that went on, it would be a very kind night, because people are judged on medals and trophies, right? Correct. And that is, he won a League Cup. That was it. He never won another medal. Alistair was saying in the group chat, I don't know if you've seen that. So cheers, Alistair Jack. He's always got good knowledge. And he was saying, apparently that's the only medal he ever won.
Oh, wow.
Now, so you consider that and you go, if during that 18-month period, the compelling argument for Viduka having it being a nice romantic story now would be if there was a league winners medal in there.
Yeah, of course.
We all fucking know it. Yeah. That's what you would get sentimental about. And you start going, oh, do you know what? Mark, I fucked off. At the end of the day, mind that time we won the league. He was brilliant that year. He scored 35 goals that year. And, in 48 games, and it was amazing. That's how it turns. But if you don't leave with the big trophy, I just think ultimately his spell is unfulfilling. It was okay. And what we got for him, we replaced with a winner. And I think, and I know we've done the Sutton showing that, but I think there is a big difference between Viduka could probably do a ping pong ball more keepy uppies than Sutton could do with a proper football, right? But the fact of the matter is, for all the takers, you got to win. And Sutton came up here as a winner, and he already was a winner, and he decided, he's like, I'm taking every medal home. And Sutton left with a barrel load. But let's be honest, Sutton had won 3 times as many medals in 12 months than what Viduka did in 18 months at Celtic.
Aye, he did.
Viduka joined the champions. Sutton joined the team 19 points behind the year before.
Yep.
There's the difference. These are the subtle differences. And that's why I do not think it will turn into a loving for Viduka overall. I think it'll be maybe viewed as a missed opportunity, Liam. And you just look at it and go, I think he's a what if player as opposed to a hate campaign.
I think we're a better manager at that time. Him control properly and having a proper role, that he would have stayed with us a lot longer. I don't think about him that much as far as being a Celtic great or having a great career, but I don't wish him any malice either. What I liked about it was, I used to watch a lot of games with a lot of English people at that point, and one of my pals at the time was a Leeds United fan, and so watching him with Leeds as well, I don't remember a lot of Scottish players, Celtic players going down south and tearing up the league as much as Mark Viduka did. And so I was always a bit of pride that, so, we have a good for a player. We do have good players that come out of Celtic. And, that was the time where the EPL was starting to flex and become the Premier League and all that. And to show that we had a guy that played with us that could come down there and smash that league as well, I think that looked good for us. And, at that point as well, you just still had Larsson, as long as Larsson was there, you could get away with a little bit more.
Yeah, just partner with whoever you fucking want. Who cares, Liam? You know what I mean?
But nowadays, Mark owns a coffee shop just outside of Zagreb with his wife. So he didn't go into coaching, didn't go into media or anything in the game.
Bill's talking about Mark Viduka, by the way, not Mark Kearney, who's in
that would confuse
if he
people.
owns a coffee shop in Zagreb, there'll be no end to this boy's talent.
That would really confuse people with his the whole Croatian thing. He's like, Croatian right back. Don't talk to me, no Croatian right back. But no, Mark Viduka, nowadays he owns a coffee shop in Zagreb. So there you go, him and his wife run it, and he didn't bother getting into the media or the coaching side of the game. So he walked away from football, and I have to say, he did what he did when he was here in terms of player ability-wise, no doubt about it. The guy was incredible, but I would agree, missed opportunity on that one. But guys, let's now look at the unfortunate run-in of this season, and I say a nightmare scenario where, it erupted like a volcano, this one, because amazingly though, I talked earlier on about Celtic's stop-start season, everything that was going wrong, you get a win, then we'd lose the next game or draw the next game. After we lost to Hearts in December of 1998, Celtic went on a 14-game unbeaten run in the league. This included them going to Ibrox and drawing 2-2, a game when Alan Stubbs scored an absolutely fantastic goal, bending in from the edge of the area with his right foot, a centre-back as well. We went to Motherwell and beat them 7-1. We smashed Aberdeen 5-1 at Pittodrie. We racked up 5-0 wins against St Johnstone, Dundee and Dunfermline at home. Rangers were still that wee bit in front, but at least we were actually getting a wee bit of momentum going here. We've got one more game against them to go, but we're still needing a few favours here and there from some of the other teams. Unfortunately, though, the week before we go to play Rangers, St Johnstone popped up again, and for the third time this season, they beat us 1-0 at McDiarmid Park, and unfortunately that put the worst possible scenario on the table from a Celtic fan point of view, and what would be the worst scenario for those who run the game, for Police Scotland, but for the media and for the TV, this was box office, because now Rangers were in a position to come to Celtic Park and win the league on our turf. Unfortunately, it wasn't going to be a good one. Remember, I talked about the 6:05 kickoffs. We were saying earlier on about people were allowed to get a bit drunk all day and go to the game. It was a highly combustible fixture anyway in normal circumstances, but you had that element in of what was on the line that night. And then, unfortunately, this was only going to erupt away. And it all kicked off with the Stefan Mahe red card, where I believe he got fouled, if I remember correctly, and had a moan at Hugh Dallas about booking the player, and Hugh Dallas lost his temper with Mahe and sent him off, if I remember. That was how it played out initially. And, of course, Stefan Mahe, being the cool, calm and collected man that he is, took it in his stride. Actually, it was quite the opposite. He was trying to go for Dallas, if I remember correctly, with the other Celtic players holding him back. Like, no, Stefan, stop. We all want to punch him, I know, but you need to keep your cool here. But that was the initial trigger on the night that kind of began the chain of events where things began to boil over, Russell.
Should they not have had a penalty before that as well?
For Celtic, so I can remember, unfortunately, all the bad things.
My memory is, I'm sure he should have won a penalty.
Is that not the one at Ibrox you're thinking about? There was a game at Ibrox where he got cleaned out.
That might be muddy. I'm trying to justify his fucking anger here, you know, because I can remember him losing the plot when he lost the plot with Dallas. It's right up the, if you watch it on the TV cam, it's up the top right.
Yep.
Of the pitch. But yeah, he's fouled. But Dallas has got the agenda today to a T. And before folk think tinfoil hats or anything like that, Hugh Dallas is a guy who sent effigies of the Pope from his SFA email address. Fact. He lost his job through that. That isn't something that is new to him. That laughing at that sort of thing, right? This is ingrained in him. It's who he is, right? This isn't a new thing that he just developed in his late 40s. So this is who Hugh Dallas is. So when Hugh Dallas is the referee at this point in time, you cannot look anymore when you look back at these games and think he was going to govern these matches officially, impartially. He was not going to do that. He has proven as time went on, even while still working for the same paymasters, that actually I do hate that lot. I fucking hate them. He would have done anything he could to ensure Rangers win that league at Celtic Park that day. End of.
Yep. He did. It was, I say, one cataclysmic chain of events after another, just doing one led on that, but that was the initial one. It didn't help as well that we were once again in the middle of an injury crisis going this game, because earlier on, Liam, you mentioned that we brought in Scott Marshall on loan as an emergency centre-back, because Celtic's team that night is an absolute shambles. Stuart Kerr was in goal that night because Jonathan Gould was injured. We had a back three of Enrico Annoni, Alan Stubbs, and emergency loanee Scott Marshall. Midfield was Vidar Risef, Venglos, Lambert, and Mahi. Kind of wing backs was Risef and Mahi. Larson was playing just behind a front two of Bratback and Viduka that night. But yeah, it doesn't help when you go down to 10 men in the first half. I can remember an instant as well where Stuart Kerr was a lucky boy, gets sent off, where he basically fannied about too long on the ball, and Rangers player closed him down, and Kerr went to clear it, and it bounced off the Rangers player, and Kerr just caught it outside his box. And it was like, oops, and he ended up caught in a booking. So, but this was after all of the earlier shenanigans with the coin and that. And imagine if a goalkeeper had got sent off that night as well. Jesus Christ, man. People would have been running on the proper way to get to him. Like, oh my God. Because I can remember that vividly where Stuart Kerr had started the game. He hadn't started many games since that one season under Tommy Burns where he became the number one keeper. He'd fell away under Jansen. But yeah, Jonathan Gould was injured and he was drafted in for that one. And I can remember him being a very lucky boy that night to stay on the park with the referee. Actually, just gave him a yellow card when in another time, you handle the ball inside the box like that, the goalkeeper's going to walk. But Mahi was sent off and then it just went from bad to worse. We had obviously Rangers going to go up. Neil McCann scored. But then it all boils over where Rangers get awarded multiple free kicks. It was like a volcano building up and erupting. And then you get the famous image where Rangers are about to take a free kick out wide and the camera pans in and Hugh Dallas is down on the ground and there's the blood trickling down his forehead. And it's like he'd been hit by a coin from the crowd. And then what happened next is once that had all been cleared up, a free kick gets flighted into the back post. A very soft penalty was awarded. Now, funny enough, this came up on the TNF last night. We were talking about this, I'm pretty sure, where it was like, did McCann bring in, or maybe it was one of the shows this week where McCann brought in a psychiatrist to analyse Dallas's performance, and that penalty, 100%. There you go, body language expert. There you go. Cheers, Mark. It's just better because I can remember at the time.
I've never heard that though before, so.
Aye.
But Tim's fans correcting Mark today apparently as well on the list.
But I do remember my live reaction, guys, when that happened, because after all the palaver with the coin and then the free kick gets flighted in.
Allegedly, there was a body language expert.
Allegedly. Believe me, I don't know if you're the same as me, but after all that palaver with all the decisions they were getting, a guy sent off, he's been hit by a coin, they whip a ball in, and instantly, a penalty as well to them, and it was just like, I can't believe that this is how I can remember live reaction. I couldn't believe he gave a penalty. I knew right away. I was like, this is deliberate because he's just been hit by a coin and he's fucking raging about it. And it was such a soft. It was Vidmar get bundled over, but there was very little in it, and it was just like, oh, this can't be happening. Alberts, of course, scores, and it just goes from bad to worse, Liam, wouldn't it?
I mean, you don't have to be a behavioural psychologist to look at him. He was fucking raging. He was angry. He was raging. He couldn't wait to blow that whistle. And I remember just throwing my hands up in the air and it's like, game's rigged, man. You know, and at that point, it felt like it was. And that was where I really, up until then, I didn't like Hugh Dallas, but there wasn't a hate for him at that point. And then I think he just went from bad to worse. After that, absolutely nothing from him. He went out of his way to make life, to be as biased as he possibly could against us. And it just looked that way. And, you know, and you add it all up, you follow the patterns and all that. Aye, absolutely. How could you know? Right? So, I don't know. He's, you know, now we get his son, you know, fast-tracked into the league as well. I mean, I'm not saying sins of the father.
Remember that as well, Liam? See what Steve said, remember that as well? A fan fell off the top tier.
I remember that,
remember that as well? That was a fan that was obviously steaming drunk and wanted to get down to the park, and he fucking came off the top tier. And it was like, oh my God, this is carnage. Everything was just going wrong that night.
I'm surprised that hasn't happened more. You know,
during some of the celebrations that we've seen, Jesus, man, some of the limbs, as they call it. But it was a mental game. Just as a highly combustible situation on normal days between Celtic and Rangers. But what was on the line that night? It was just the perfect storm came together. In the end, Rangers end up beating us 3-0. McCann scores twice and Albert scores. After the game, there's more red cards dished out. Reset was sent off for us. I think Rod Wallace was sent off for Rangers. Rangers players celebrated by doing the huddle in front of their own fans down in the corner, just further antagonising the situation. And yeah, it's one of the main reasons why nowadays we don't see the later kickoff. So as Russell, you rightly say, that doesn't stop many people. They're still going to get a cargo at 4 a.m. or whatever to the way to the game, wherever they're travelling from.
It's a lazy fucking excuse to blame drunken supporters when it's pricks in the middle of the officiating in a biased manner. Look at that. Do you know what I mean? Gives a fair game, and I'll show you a drunk man who leaves the ground content, gutted for his team, or delighted.
There's another one.
You don't leave the ground trying to attack referees if the referee it fairly.
There's another thing. Patrick Bob. So I remember it was a Sunday game. It was also the May Day bank holiday, so people were off on the Monday. It was the 1st of May 1999 we played them. So the first Monday in May is a bank holiday. So people would have been off work the next day as well. So that just further added to it. People just it was a horrible kind of time. But the referee that day antagonised it. Funny enough, this would be the last time he would officiate a Celtic Rangers game this season, because for some mental reason, after all of that, the SFA felt it was fine for Hugh Dallas to referee the Scottish Cup final as well. After all these antics that went on, because Celtic had one more chance at winning some kind of trophy this season to salvage something, even though the title's gone. Rangers would won the League Cup as well. They're chasing a treble. We're just trying to salvage something from the season. We've got to play them at Hampden, the newly refurbished Hampden with the new stand that they've built it officially opened for the Scottish Cup final in 1999. As I said earlier on, Venglos did get a bit of flack for his lack of including Mark Viduka in the squad, who had a strong finish to the season, because at that point in time, in cup games, you're only allowed 3 substitutes on the bench. So instead of picking 3 outfield players, he picked Stuart Kerr, a sub-goalkeeper.
Which slips people's memory. Very, very important fact that you've got 3 subs. Do you really find it a place for a youthful striker who's having a purple patch?
And he put a goalkeeper
3
on.
subs.
Put Tommy Johnston and he put Phil O'Donnell on the bench, and it was like Stuart Kerr, a goalkeeper.
Yep.
You know, there was a likelihood of the goalkeeper having to come on. It's like, you know, especially if we were going to be chasing a goal in the game.
So you would have went without a goalie on the bench?
I would have went without a goalie.
Oh, fair enough, Phil.
Yeah.
That is wrong. You're more rock and roll than me. There'd be no subs bench I would have without a keeper on it.
Or at the very least, Tommy Johnson doesn't make the bench and Mark Viduka makes the bench given the forum he was in. That's the other one you could do.
Yeah, I think that's a fair debate. But no, Phil, stick to your guns. If you I love that, mate.
I know that somebody in the chat is probably going to point out, because it did dawn on me.
He's nuts.
I'll double down on it. I mean, it's against Rangers and all. We've had a nightmare season. We need to try and win something. If we're in a situation where we're chasing a game, got to have 3 outfield players, man.
What do you think the opposition are thinking now? Not even a keeper on the bench, just 3 strikers with Phil.
Just injure the goalkeeper.
Dutchell and Ian Wright doing the chicken dance. You know what I mean? It just who cares?
Aye, it was. But that was what happened. That was one of the controversies at the end in the cup final, where Venglos opted not to include Mark Viduka anywhere in the match day squad. But yeah, we end up losing the cup final 1-0 as well. Rod Wallace scores. There wasn't many. Well, definitely not on the scale of what we saw in the last league game in terms of flashpoints. But the one moment that sticks out for me is it was right at the very end as we're trailing 1-0, 88th minute. Paul Lambert has a shot from the edge of the area, and at the time, I was so convinced, many of us were, that Lorenzo Amoruso handballed it. It turns out it's the way he leans towards the ball, it actually hits him here in the upper chest, but just the way he leans, it makes it look like it hits his arm. And we were convinced it was a penalty, watching it. Even at the time, watching the replay, you're like, that's a penalty, that's a handball. And you're thinking, Dallas is at it again. Dallas has done it again, but it's actually hit him here, but just the way he leans towards the ball, it kind of deceives you a wee bit. But that was the closest we came that day. It was a very sort of tepid performance from Celtic. See, Rod Wallace scored the only goal just after half-time, and unfortunately, Rangers picked up the cup. They won the treble. It wasn't exactly the season that we'd hoped for, but it wasn't the end for Jozef Venglos, guys, at Celtic, because he would then move under the new, because Fergus McCann was about to leave. His 5-year plan was over. He was stepping down. We're going to have another overhaul in the summer, but he became the European technical advisor, which was basically a sort of head scout for like a European, for scouting talent across Europe. And I believe we mentioned this before, but was he involved in the Stilian Petrov signing? Was he the one who identified Petrov?
I think he was involved. I think there was a rumor of that, that he was involved in that. And you wonder as well, when you okay, the managerial record is you've lost a treble to Rangers, but if you're remotely involved in the business side at all, right, and you're looking at the bang for the buck from the new signings, you're looking at Albi. He's Sweden's vice captain, I think, at this point. You know what I mean? He's 27, 28, and we got him for a song. You're looking at Lubo going, he's, up there with the best players in Scotland, If Henrik wasn't there, he'd be right up there. I mean, this guy's a joke. No one had even heard of him. And you start thinking, he's got an eye for a player. And the age thing, let's bring it back to that without being ageist and go, Joe, maybe a more relaxed role might suit your needs. And he's going, Phil's got balls, no goalie. See?
No goalie,
But do you know what I mean? No, Liam, I think maybe it was a marriage that even Venglos went, so I've loved the club, because you do love Celtic once you've joined them, right? I appreciate the manager roles maybe not went the best, but the good bits they've recognised with the player recruitment, you become the chief scout. I think it makes sense. I think that's a forward-thinking appointment.
I think so as
Could
well.
Could that mean that 2 seasons in a row, our former manager watched our new manager from the stands?
It would have. Yeah. Aye, it would have then.
Because I wonder if he was... I've got a feeling he probably was there the first day.
I would think so, yeah.
That's mental.
Can I jump in with a wee bit of thing about Melby? He had to quit the job. He had a job in Sweden. Like, he wasn't a full-time player. He was a circulations manager of a newspaper, and he had to quit that to come to Celtic Park.
What?
Wow!
When
Melby came into the team, he was also working as a circulation manager, something like that, with a Swedish newspaper. And he had to give up his job to come to Glasgow.
That's class. Imagine him delivering your paper.
Big Dolph Lundgren turning up and delivering your papers. Right? Oh, man.
Some size of paper. Johnny Bravo, as people might say earlier.
Right, Phil, that's been 2 hours, 20 minutes. Get to the trivia. I'm ready to go.
Yes, it was. So there's only one way to do this, seeing as there's a squad getting named out. So what I want to do is everyone in the chat in Paradise, make some noise for the boys, because number 1 is...
Johnny Gold.
Number 2 is...
Tomboy.
Number 3 is...
Tosh McKinlay.
No! You're wrong! Yes,
Stefan Mahé.
Stefan Mahé. Tosh McKinlay's away. Oh no, he goes away at that point, but he's he's number 18. He was 18.
Right, I've got the rest. Let's go again.
Number 4 is
Jackie McNamara.
Yes, number 5.
Shit, this is wrong.
Alan
This
Stubbs.
is the one I was most dodgy about. Malky Mackay.
No, both of you are wrong. It's not Malky Mackay, it's not Alan Stubbs.
Go.
Mark Reaper.
He's still number 5.
Number 5.
Right, keep going.
Number 6 is
Alan Stubbs.
Yes. No, I'm insulted to ashes. Number 7.
Henrik Larsson.
Number 8 is
Craig Billy.
Of course it is. Number 9 is
Harold Bratback.
Harold Bratback. This is a tricky one. Number 10 is
I've got it. Phil O'Donnell.
It's Phil O'Donnell. Yes. And finally, number 11 is
Tricky. I think he's Danish.
Oh.
Yes?
Could be a good place to look.
No, let Liam come in and he can round it off. Is he Danish?
Rusev.
No. Danish.
His first name is the same name as a Scottish football team that
we were playing tomorrow.
Vikost. Yeah.
Morton Vikost, yes.
So I got 8 out of 11.
You did. So just to recap.
Mcginlay'S was the one that I thought of Mahé, and then I went, no, maybe he joined during that season. That's where my mind went.
So it was Gould, Boyd, Mahé, McNamara, Reaper, Stubbs, Larson, Bully, Bratback, O'Donnell, and Vikost with the 1-11. And the newly revamped squad number system, they retained the 1-11 shirts. So there you go. That wraps up the 1999 season. Jozef Venglos goes and becomes a scout. John Barnes and Kenny Dow come in, but that is a grim story for another time, folks. We'll come to that one day. I'm looking forward to it, but we will get there at some point. But yeah, that is 1999 season. On the books, in the pocket, and out of sight. Russell, would you like to tell the people what is happening over the weekend?
Yeah, very quickly. We're going to do PMP. I'm busting for a P. We're going to do Sunday bladder.
Yes.
I might do a Sunday sesh. Who cares, maybe? Why not? I have not done one in ages. Well, a few weeks. So yeah, Sunday sesh might be in the cards. We could do a Sunday blather at 12:30 because it's too good, or 11:30 with David, or 11 a.m. I don't know how early he does it now, but it's brilliant because the paper talk that he's now bringing in, the juice, the back and forth to the judge, it's great. And then we'll get to maybe 6 o'clock, and I might fancy a wee more laid back Sunday sesh, just talking, just chit chat. Monday will be the Monday Club, but PMP on Saturday will be a lot later. I know the game's early, but I'm working all day. So if I'm doing PMP, unless you want to do one through the afternoon, Phil, entirely your gift. If you don't want to do it, I'll do one about 7 o'clock. But it'll only be for an hour or so, because then I'm watching the boxing. So
no problem at all. So
we will be live though every day. Oh, and we'll do a bus stop at some point as well. Probably tomorrow now, Phil, because
that's fine.
I'm in the office tomorrow, so it's just a wee bit too late.
No worries. Well, folks, that is the end of the show. So we will get Chris Sutton teed up. We'll be heading on our way. Guys, you enjoyed yourself. Russell's absolutely jumping up and down. Run. Go, Russell. Go. I'll wrap up the show.
Bye.
See you later, guys. Enjoy the game tomorrow if you're going. See yous.
I mean, you've all that stuff at the start. They won't be playing Tina Turner on the coach on the way home, will they?
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan. He's a Rangers puppet. He's a cheerleader. That's what he is.